Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for 9 hours? The woman sitting across from Evan Cole looked like she hadn't slept in a month. Her hands trembled around a coffee cup she hadn't touched. Mascara smudged beneath red-rimmed eyes. They'd met exactly 3 minutes ago through a matchmaking service, and already she was asking him to lie. Not for money, not for fun, but to survive something that terrified her more than honesty ever could. Evan should have walked away. He had his own secrets to protect. Instead, he heard himself say, "Tell me what happens at 3 o'clock. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far Hannah and Evan's story travels." Now, let me tell you how a fake relationship became the most real thing either of them had ever known. The Saturday morning rain had turned Seattle's streets into rivers of gray, the kind of weather that made everything look like it was dissolving at the edges. Hannah Pierce stood outside Common Grounds Coffee, staring at her reflection in the rain-streaked window. She looked like hell, she knew it. Dark circles carved shadows beneath her eyes, her hair pulled into a pawnbee that had given up pretending to be neat somewhere around dawn, and her hands wouldn't stop shaking no matter how many times she pressed them against her thighs. Inside, past the fogged glass and the hiss of the espresso machine, a man sat alone at a corner table. Hannah had seen exactly one photo. Evan Cole, 34, consultant, single father. The matchmaking agency, Love Reconstructed, which specialized in second-chance romance for the emotionally complicated, had promised he was kind. That was the word they'd used, kind. As if kindness could be quantified, photographed, and presented in a manila folder with a $70 service fee. Hannah didn't need kind. She needed someone who could lie convincingly for 9 hours and then disappear from her life forever. She pushed through the door. The coffee shop smelled like wet wool and burnt sugar, all warmth and mundane Saturday comfort that felt obscene against the panic clawing up her throat. Evan looked up as she approached, and Hannah's first thought was that the photograph hadn't done him justice, and her second thought was that this made everything worse. He was handsome in an understated way that would photograph well, tall enough, good bone structure, dark hair that looked like he'd forgotten to comb it, wearing jeans and a navy sweater with what appeared to be dried oatmeal on the shoulder. His eyes were brown, warm, and currently scanning her face with the kind of careful attention that suggested he was already cataloging her damage. "Hannah?" He stood, offered his hand. His palm was warm, calloused in a way that surprised her. "Evan, can I get you something? Coffee? They have excellent pastries if you... Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for a day?" The words came out in a rush, sharp and desperate. Hannah watched his expression shift, confusion, concern, a flicker of something that might have been alarm. "Not a whole day, 9 hours, 3 p.m. to midnight. I'll pay you, whatever you want. I just need..." Her voice cracked. "I need someone to stand next to me and make it look like I'm not completely alone." Evan's hand was still extended between them, frozen in the handshake she'd forgotten to complete. Slowly, carefully, he lowered it. He didn't sit back down. He didn't walk away. He just studied her with those two attentive eyes, and Hannah felt her carefully constructed composure beginning to fragment. "Sit down," he said quietly, "before you fall down." Hannah's knees gave out before pride could stop them. She collapsed into the chair across from him, and the tears she'd been holding back since 4 a.m. started leaking down her cheeks despite every promise she'd made herself in the car. She pressed her palms against her eyes, humiliated, furious, breaking apart in a coffee shop in front of a complete stranger who was supposed to be a potential date, not a witness to her complete psychological collapse. She heard the scrape of a chair, felt rather than saw Evan move to the seat beside her instead of across. A moment later, a napkin appeared in her peripheral vision, held in those same calloused hands. "I'm not going to ask if you're okay," Evan said, his voice low enough that the barista couldn't hear. "Because you're clearly not. But I need you to breathe. 4 counts in, 4 counts out. Can you do that?" Hannah wanted to tell him she wasn't a child, that she didn't need breathing exercises or napkins or pity from a man in a coffee-stained sweater. Instead, she found herself following his instructions. In, 2, 3, 4, out, 2, 3, 4, until the white noise of panic receded enough for coherent thought. "I'm sorry," she managed. "This was stupid. I should go. You showed up, Evan said simply. That's not stupid. That's brave. He paused, and when Hannah finally looked at him, she found his expression thoughtful rather than pitying. But I'm not going to pretend to be your boyfriend without knowing why. Of course he wasn't. No one did anything without wanting to know the story first, the damage, the exact shape of another person's humiliation. Hannah took the napkin, wiped her eyes, and felt the last of her dignity evaporate like steam from the espresso machine. My ex is getting married today, to someone better than me, and everyone I know will be there, watching me pretend I'm happy about it. Then don't go, Evan said. It wasn't advice, just a statement of obvious fact. I have to. Hannah's hands twisted the napkin into a rope. His mother invited me personally, sent the invitation to my office, called to make sure I'd received it. She wants me there. She wants everyone to see that I'm exactly what she always said. Not enough. Not the right kind of woman. Not worthy of her son or her grandchildren or a place in their perfect, photogenic life. The words tasted like acid. Hannah had spent 6 weeks trying to find a way out of this wedding, 6 weeks of sleepless nights and phantom stomach aches and elaborate excuses that crumbled the moment she imagined facing Margaret Porter's knowing smile. Margaret, who'd made it clear from the beginning that Hannah was temporary. A mistake. A phase her son would outgrow once he found someone capable of giving him what really mattered. Evan was quiet for a long moment. Then, not enough how? This was the part where people got uncomfortable, where their expressions shifted into rehearsed sympathy, where they started calculating exit strategies and checking their phones. Hannah had seen it enough times to recognize the pattern. I can't have children, she said flatly. Premature ovarian failure. Diagnosed at 28. Marcus and I were together for 4 years. He said it didn't matter. He lied. She met Evan's eyes, daring him to look away. His fiancée is 6 months pregnant. They've been together for 8 months. You do the math. Evan didn't flinch, didn't offer platitudes about God's plan or silver linings or the miracle of adoption. He just nodded slowly, like she'd explained something complex but not particularly shocking. So you need someone to stand next to you, he said, and prove to a room full of people that you're more than your medical history. Yes. The relief of being understood was so acute it hurt. I need them to look at me and see someone who moved on, someone who's fine, someone who didn't spend the last 6 months wondering if I'm fundamentally defective. You're not. You don't know me. I know that biology doesn't determine worth. Evan's voice carried a weight that suggested personal experience. And I know that anyone who made you feel defective is the one with the problem. Hannah laughed, sharp and humorless. That's a lovely sentiment. It doesn't help me survive tonight. No, Evan agreed. But I might. Hannah stared at him. You're saying yes? I'm saying I want to understand what I'm agreeing to. Evan pulled out his phone, opened a notes app with practiced efficiency. Walk me through it. 3 p.m. to midnight. Where? What's expected? What's your ex's name? What's the story we're telling? The practical question steadied something in Hannah's chest. This was transactional, manageable. She could do transactional. The wedding's at Thornwood Estate, she said, north of Tacoma. It's going to be big. Marcus's family has money. Old Seattle tech money. The ceremony starts at 4, reception immediately after. Dinner, dancing, the whole performance. She took a breath. His name is Marcus Porter. We dated for 4 years, lived together for 2. Everyone there knew us as a couple. Now they'll know me as the woman he replaced. And me? Evan asked. Who am I in this story? I don't know. I didn't think past asking someone to show up. Hannah rubbed her temples. A consultant? That's what the agency said you do. We could say we met through work. Keep it vague. These people don't actually care about my life. They just want to confirm I'm as pathetic as they suspected. I don't do vague well, Evan said quietly. If we're going to sell this, we need details. Real ones. How we met, how long we've been together, what I do for work, where I live. The more specific the lie, the more believable it becomes. There was something in his voice, a familiar exhaustion that suggested he'd done this before. Not this exactly, but something close. Something that required performance and precision. Hannah leaned back in her chair, studying him properly for the first time. The oatmeal stain, the worn watch that looked expensive once, the way he'd moved to sit beside her without asking, like proximity was a reflex rather than a strategy. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You could walk away right now and never think about this again. Evan was quiet for a moment. My son is 5, he said finally. I'm raising him alone. His mother left before his first birthday, and every birthday party, every school event, every moment that's supposed to include 2 parents. I see that look you're wearing right now, that not enough look. So maybe I'm helping you because I recognize it, or maybe I'm just tired of watching people beat themselves up for circumstances they didn't choose. The honesty landed like a gift. Hannah felt something loosen in her chest, some knot of isolation she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it had weight. Thank you, she said softly. Evan shrugged. Thank me after we survive tonight. He glanced at his phone. It's 9:30 now. We have 5.5 hours to build a relationship convincing enough to fool people who already want to believe the worst about you. Tell me about Marcus. What does he do? What does his family value? What are they going to be looking for? Hannah pulled out her own phone, opened Instagram to Marcus's perfectly curated feed. He's a venture capitalist, partner at his family's firm, Thornwood Capital. They invest in biotech startups, medical devices, sustainable technology, anything that makes them look progressive while padding their portfolio. She scrolled past engagement photos, charity galas, carefully staged candids. His mother Margaret runs the family foundation. His father Frederick sits on 6 corporate boards. They value legacy, appearances, continuity. And the fiancée? Vanessa Chen, Stanford MBA, brilliant, beautiful, everything I'm not. Hannah's voice stayed flat through sheer force of will. She works in corporate strategy at one of their portfolio companies. They met at a foundation event 6 months after Marcus and I broke up. Or, that's the official story. Evan studied the photos. She looks tired. She's 6 months pregnant. That's not what I meant. Evan zoomed in on one of the engagement photos. Look at her eyes. That's not happiness. That's performance. Hannah had looked at these photos approximately 800 times in the past 6 weeks. She'd never noticed. What are you, a body language expert? Father of a 5-year-old who has big feelings he can't always articulate, Evan said. You learn to read what people aren't saying. He set the phone down. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. We met 4 months ago. Professional conference, something boring and believable. Education Technology Summit. You were presenting on user experience design. I was there representing my consulting firm. We started talking at the cocktail hour, exchanged numbers, stayed in touch. I'm a graphic designer, not a UX specialist, Hannah interrupted. You do branding for educational apps, Evan corrected smoothly. Close enough for believable overlap. We kept it casual at first, both of us gun-shy after previous relationships. But it developed, slowly, honestly. We haven't told many people yet because we wanted to be sure before making it public. Hannah blinked. You've done this before. I've survived corporate events where everyone's trying to read everyone else, Evan said. Same principle. The key is internal consistency and just enough detail to satisfy curiosity without inviting interrogation. He met her eyes. But here's the non-negotiable part. If anyone asks about my son, you talk about him like he matters, not as a prop, not as evidence that I'm a good guy, as a real person who's part of my life and therefore part of yours. Can you do that? The fierceness in his voice caught Hannah off guard. Of course. His name is Noah. He likes dinosaurs, specifically Stegosaurus. He can't say his R's yet, so it comes out Stega saw us. He's afraid of automatic hand dryers and refuses to wear any shirt that isn't soft. He cried for 20 minutes this morning because I cut his toast wrong, rectangles instead of triangles. Evan's expression softened. He's with my parents today. He thinks I'm on a work thing. I don't lie to him about important stuff, but I also don't need him worrying about why his dad is pretending to date a stranger. Something shifted in Hannah's chest. This wasn't just a favor. This was a man with boundaries and priorities and a life that didn't revolve around rescuing damaged women in coffee shops. I'll talk about him like he's real, Hannah promised, because he is real. And because any man who cuts toast the wrong way clearly needs adult supervision. Evan's mouth quirked. Triangles are objectively superior. Objectively, Hannah agreed and felt herself almost smile. For the next 3 hours, they built a relationship that didn't exist. Evan asked questions. Where did they have their first real date? A hole-in-the-wall Thai place in Fremont. What did they argue about? Hannah's tendency to work 16-hour days, Evan's refusal to talk about his feelings until he'd fully processed them. What did Hannah love about him? The way he listened like her words mattered, the quiet steadiness, the fact that he'd shown up. What did Evan love about Hannah? He'd paused on that one, studying her across the table with that careful attention that made her feel transparent and protected simultaneously. Your resilience, he'd said finally. The way you kept showing up to something that terrified you because you refused to let fear make your decisions. That takes strength most people don't have. Hannah had looked away, throat tight. That's a generous interpretation of stubbornness. Same thing, different framing. They rehearsed introductions, built a timeline, decided that Evan would drive. His car was unremarkable, which felt safer than Hannah's BMW that screamed, trying too hard. They agreed on subtle physical contact, hand-holding, his arm around her waist, the kind of casual intimacy that read as comfortable rather than performative. One more thing, Evan said as they prepared to leave the coffee shop. What happens if it gets too much? If you need out? Hannah frowned. I just have to survive until midnight. That's not what I asked. Evan's voice was gentle but firm. What's the signal? How do I know if you're drowning? No one had ever asked her that before. Marcus certainly hadn't. He'd always assumed she could handle anything, that her competence was infinite and self-sustaining. I'll say I need air, Hannah said quietly. If I say that, it means I'm about to break. Then we leave, immediately. No questions, no debate. But no debate, Evan repeated. We're not doing this if it destroys you. Understood? Hannah nodded, not trusting her voice. At 2:45, she sat in her apartment, staring at the dress hanging on her closet door. Midnight blue silk, elegant and understated, expensive enough to signal she was fine, simple enough not to look like she was trying to compete. She'd bought it 3 weeks ago during a lunch break, standing in the department store dressing room with tears running down her face as the saleswoman pretended not to notice. Her phone buzzed. Outside whenever you're ready, no rush. Hannah put on the dress, applied makeup with hands that only trembled a little, twisted her hair into something that approximated elegance, looked at herself in the mirror and saw a woman who was about to walk into a room full of people who'd watched her fail. Evan's car was exactly as unremarkable as promised, a silver Honda that had seen better years but was impeccably clean inside. He stood beside it, and Hannah's breath caught despite everything. He changed into a dark gray suit that fit him perfectly. White shirt, no tie. He looked successful, confident, real. You look beautiful, he said simply. You look like you actually know how to dress yourself, Hannah replied and watched him smile. My secret weapon. I have a sister who sends me photos of appropriate outfits for various social situations. He opened the passenger door. Ready? No, absolutely not. Hannah slid into the car anyway. The drive south took 40 minutes through rain that never quite committed to being a storm. Evan drove with easy competence, one hand on the wheel, and didn't try to fill the silence with meaningless chatter. Hannah watched the landscape blur past, suburbs giving way to larger properties, glimpses of the sound through gaps in the trees. Tell me about her, Evan said finally. Not Marcus. His mother. The one who really wants you there. Hannah's hands tightened in her lap. Margaret Porter believes in genetic legacy. Bloodlines, the kind of dynasty thinking that went out of fashion everywhere except old money circles. She kept her voice clinical, detached. She was polite to me for the first 6 months. Then Marcus mentioned wanting children someday, and she started asking questions, subtle ones at first. Did I come from a large family? Any health issues I should be aware of? What did my parents do? Red flags, Evan murmured. I missed them, or ignored them. I was in love. I thought if I just proved myself valuable enough, smart enough, successful enough, She'd see past the fact that I came from a middle-class family in Spokane with no social connections and a mother who cleaned houses. Hannah's laugh was sharp. When I finally told her about the diagnosis, she actually looked relieved, like I'd confirmed something she'd suspected all along. She told Marcus, not me, him, that it was better to know now before things got serious. We were already living together. Jesus. Marcus defended me. Sort of. He said it didn't matter, that we'd figure it out. But he stopped talking about the future after that, stopped introducing me at family events as his girlfriend, and started using my name like I was a colleague. It took him 8 months to actually end it, but Margaret ended it the day I told her the truth. Evan's jaw tightened. And you're going back into that. I'm going to show her she didn't break me. Even if it breaks you in the process? Hannah didn't have an answer for that. Thornwood Estate appeared through the trees like something from a Gothic novel, all stone walls and manicured gardens and windows that reflected the gray sky back at itself. Cars lined the circular drive, expensive and understated. Evan's Honda looked exactly as out of place as Hannah had feared, and she felt a spike of gratitude for it. At least one thing about today was honestly hers. They parked at the far end of the lot. Evan killed the engine, but didn't immediately move to get out. Instead, he turned to face her fully. Last chance to change your mind, he said. We can drive away right now, get burgers, tell Margaret Porter she can rot in her genetic dynasty fantasies. God, Hannah wanted to. She wanted to choose dignity over performance, wanted to prioritize her own sanity over other people's judgment. But that would mean admitting defeat. That would mean Margaret won. I need to do this, she said. Okay. Evan reached across the console, took her hand. His palm was warm, steady, real. Then let's go prove you're exactly enough. They walked across the parking lot together, Evan's hand firm against the small of her back. The rain had softened to mist, and Hannah could hear music drifting from the estate, string quartet, elegant and expensive. People clustered near the entrance, champagne flutes catching what little light the afternoon offered. Hannah recognized faces. Marcus's college roommate, his cousin from California, people she'd shared Thanksgiving dinners with, laughed with, trusted to see her as more than Marcus Porter's temporary girlfriend. They all stared. Evan felt her falter, his hand pressed more firmly against her spine. Breathe, he murmured. You belong here as much as anyone. A woman detached from a nearby group, Catherine something, Marcus's second cousin, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Hannah's monthly rent. Her smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Hannah! Oh my God, I didn't think you'd actually come. She air-kissed both of Hannah's cheeks, her perfume overwhelming. And you brought someone. How wonderful. I'm Catherine. Evan? His handshake was brief, professional. Nice to meet you. How do you two know each other? Catherine's eyes were bright with malicious curiosity. I don't think we've heard anything about you, Evan. We've been keeping things quiet, Hannah said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. We met through work a few months ago, still figuring things out. How modern. Catherine's smile didn't waver. What do you do, Evan? I'm in education technology. Consulting, primarily. The lie came easily, comfortably. Boring stuff, really. Systems optimization, user engagement metrics. Oh. Catherine's interest visibly dimmed. Consultants weren't impressive enough to warrant further interrogation. Well, lovely. You should go find your seats. Ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I think, Hannah, you're at table 7 with all Marcus's work friends. That should be fun for you. The seating arrangement was deliberate cruelty. Of course it was. Actually, Evan said smoothly, I think there might have been a mix-up. Hannah's my +1. We'd need to be seated together. Catherine blinked. I'll check with the coordinator, though I'm not sure there's room to rearrange at this point. I'm sure they'll figure something out. Evan's smile was pleasant, implacable. Thank you so much for your help. He guided Hannah away before Catherine could respond, his hand never leaving her back. They moved through the crowd toward the ceremony space, a massive tent strung with lights that probably cost more than Hannah's car. Chairs arranged in perfect rows, facing an altar draped in white roses. Table 7 with Marcus's work friends, Evan murmured. That's psychological warfare. That's Margaret. Hannah's chest felt tight. She planned every detail of this, every humiliation. Then we improvise. Evan steered them toward a coordinator clipboard-wielding woman who looked harried. Excuse me, we need to update the seating arrangement. Hannah Pierce and guest will need to be together. The coordinator frowned. I don't show a +1 for Ms. Pierce. Must have been an oversight. Evan's voice carried easy authority. We RSVP'd together. Evan Cole. If it's easier, we can sit toward the back. We don't need anything fancy. Something in his demeanor made the coordinator nod. Maybe it was the suit. Maybe it was the confidence. Maybe it was just that she had 80 other problems, and this seemed solvable. Let me see what I can do. They ended up at a table near the perimeter, not relegated to social Siberia, but not in the inner circle either. Perfect. The other couples at their table were politely disinterested, offering brief introductions before returning to their own conversations. Hannah watched people file in, saw Margaret Porter holding court near the front, her silver hair immaculate, her champagne-colored dress impeccable. Saw Marcus standing near the altar, looking nervous and young and exactly like the man she'd loved for 4 years. You okay? Evan's voice was quiet. No. Hannah's hands twisted in her lap. But I'm here. That's enough. The ceremony began. Vanessa Chen appeared at the far end of the aisle, and Hannah's stomach dropped. She was beautiful, objectively, devastatingly beautiful. The pregnancy glow everyone talked about was real, making her skin luminous, her smile radiant. The dress had been tailored to accommodate her belly, elegant and sophisticated, and when Marcus saw her, his whole face transformed with uncomplicated joy. Hannah felt Evan's hand find hers under the table. She gripped it hard enough to hurt. The officiant began talking about love and commitment and building a future together, about the blessing of family, about legacy and continuity and all the things Hannah would never provide. She felt the words like knives, each one perfectly aimed at her most vulnerable places. Vanessa's belly was impossible to ignore. 6 months pregnant meant conception would have occurred in March. Hannah and Marcus had broken up in February, 8 months ago. The math was damning. Breathe, Evan whispered. 4 counts. Hannah breathed. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Survived. The ceremony ended with applause. Marcus kissed his bride. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief that probably cost more than Hannah's entire outfit. People surged toward the reception tent, champagne and congratulations, and carefully performed happiness. Evan didn't let go of Hannah's hand. The reception was exactly as elaborate as Hannah had feared. 10-piece band, 5-course dinner, champagne towers and ice sculptures and centerpieces that would feed a family for a month. Margaret Porter worked the room like the society matriarch she was, accepting congratulations and compliments with practiced grace. When her eyes landed on Hannah, her expression didn't change. But something flickered there. Satisfaction, vindication, the cold pleasure of seeing an enemy exactly where she belonged. She made her way over during cocktail hour, champagne flute in hand, smile sharp. Hannah, how brave of you to come. Margaret's eyes swept over Evan with clinical assessment. And you've brought a friend. Boyfriend, Evan corrected gently. Evan Cole. You have a beautiful home, Mrs. Porter. It's been in Frederick's family for 3 generations. Margaret's smile tightened. We believe in preserving legacy. I don't believe I've heard Hannah mention you. We've been private about things, Hannah managed. Still early. How modern. Margaret's tone suggested nothing modern could possibly be worthwhile. What do you do, Evan? Education technology, consulting. The dismissal was subtle but absolute. And you have children? Hannah's stomach dropped. Evan's expression didn't change. A son, he said. Noah. He's 5. How lovely. Single father? Margaret's eyes gleamed. That must be difficult, managing a career and a child without a mother's influence. The condescension was breathtaking. Hannah felt Evan's hand tighten fractionally against her back. We manage beautifully, he said evenly. Hannah's been wonderful with him. It was the first lie that felt dangerous. Hannah had never met Noah. But something in Evan's voice made it sound true. and Margaret's expression flickered with something that might have been uncertainty. "Well," Margaret said, "how fortunate for you both." Her gaze returned to Hannah. "I do hope you're happy, dear. Marcus and Vanessa are building something quite special, a real family, the kind of legacy that matters." There it was, the knife, perfectly placed. "I am happy," Hannah heard herself say. Genuinely. Marcus deserves someone who can give him what he wants. Indeed, Margaret's smile was victorious. "Enjoy the evening." She glided away, leaving Hannah trembling with rage and humiliation and the overwhelming urge to scream. "I need air," Hannah whispered. Evan didn't hesitate. "Come on." He guided her through the crowd, past people pretending not to stare, out through the side exit, into the gardens. The mist had turned back into proper rain, cold and cleansing. Hannah walked until they were hidden by hedges, until the music was distant and muffled, until she could finally stop performing. Then she broke. The sobs came violent and ugly, months of grief and rage and shame pouring out in a rush. Evan didn't try to stop her or soothe her with empty words. He just stood in the rain, let her cry into his probably ruined suit jacket, and held her steady while she fell apart. "I hate her," Hannah gasped. "I hate that she gets to win. I hate that she's right. I hate that I came here thinking I could prove something when all I've done is confirm everything she already believed." "She's not right." Evan's voice was fierce. "She's cruel. There's a difference. She has a legacy. I have nothing. You have survival. You have strength. You have the ability to stand in front of someone determined to destroy you and keep breathing." His hands framed her face, making her look at him. "That matters more than legacy. That matters more than blood." Hannah wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him. "Can we leave?" she whispered. "Please. I can't go back in there." "Yes." They walked back toward the parking lot, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the performance they were supposed to maintain. Evan opened the car door, waited until Hannah was inside, then circled to the driver's seat with rain streaming down his face. The engine started. The estate disappeared behind them. Hannah watched it go and felt something break loose in her chest. Not relief, but the beginning of it. The possibility of air. "Where do you want to go?" Evan asked. "Anywhere that isn't here." He drove south, away from the estate, away from the highway. Found a small diner tucked between a gas station and a shuttered arcade, the kind of place that served breakfast all day, and didn't ask questions. They slid into a corner booth, both of them soaked, mascara running down Hannah's face, Evan's suit probably destroyed. The waitress brought coffee without being asked. Took their order, burgers, fries, a milkshake to share because Evan insisted, and left them in blessed silence. "I'm sorry," Hannah said finally. "I dragged you into my nightmare, ruined your suit, made you lie to a horrible woman who's going to forget you exist by tomorrow. My suit was already ruined. Oatmeal incident this morning." Evan wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "And you didn't drag me. I chose to come. Why?" The question hung between them. Evan was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee like it held answers. "When my ex left," he said finally, "she told me I wasn't enough, not exciting enough, not ambitious enough, not the kind of man she wanted to build a life with. She walked away from our 6-month-old son because I didn't meet her standards." His jaw tightened. "For a long time, I believed her. I thought maybe she was right. Maybe I was fundamentally insufficient." "You're not," Hannah said fiercely. "Neither are you." Evan met her eyes. "That's what I'm trying to say. I recognize that look in your eyes this morning because I've worn it myself. And I'm tired of watching people, including me, believe lies cruel people tell us about our worth." The burgers arrived. They ate in companionable silence, the kind that felt earned rather than awkward. The milkshake sat between them, 2 straws, absurdly intimate for 2 people who'd met this morning. "Tell me about Noah," Hannah said. "Really, not the fake relationship version." Evan's whole expression softened. "He's a nightmare and perfect in equal measure. Obsessed with dinosaurs to the point where I now know more about the Cretaceous period than I ever wanted to. He believes automatic hand dryers are trying to eat his hands, which makes public restrooms an adventure. He can't pronounce his R's yet, so roar comes out, whoa, which is both adorable and makes it hard to take his dinosaur impression seriously. Hannah found herself smiling. What happened with his mother? She wanted a different life than the one we had. Realized it 6 months after Noah was born. Left a note. I haven't heard from her since. Evan's voice stayed even, but Hannah heard the old pain underneath. Noah asks sometimes. I tell him the truth, that she loved him but couldn't stay, and that sometimes people make choices we don't understand. I don't lie to him about the big stuff. Does he believe you? Mostly. Some days he's angry. Some days he's sad. Most days he's just a kid who wants to know why his dinosaur figurines can't go in the dishwasher. Evan smiled faintly. I'm terrified I'm screwing it up. Single dad, no manual, making it up as I go. But he's happy, mostly, and he knows he's loved without condition. That's something. That's everything, Hannah said softly. They stayed in the diner until the rain stopped and the sky darkened toward evening. Talked about nothing important. Favorite movies, worst jobs, places they'd never been but wanted to see. Built a connection that felt real despite its foundation in fiction. At 10:30, Evan drove Hannah home, walked her to her apartment door like the date this was supposed to be. Thank you, Hannah said. For today. For not making me feel pathetic. You're not pathetic, Evan's voice was firm. You're human. There's a difference. Hannah felt tears threatening again. I don't know how to do this. Move forward. Believe I'm enough when everyone spent years proving I'm not. One day at a time, Evan said. One choice that puts you first instead of performing for people who don't deserve you. He paused. Can I tell you something? Yes. This morning, when you walked into that coffee shop looking absolutely terrified, I thought you were the bravest person I'd seen in a long time. And tonight, watching you survive that wedding, survive Margaret Porter's cruelty, survive your own grief, that didn't change my mind. His eyes were serious. You're stronger than you think. I hope eventually you'll believe that. Hannah's throat was too tight for words. She just nodded. Evan smiled. Noah and I usually go to Discovery Park on Sunday mornings, feed the ducks, attempt kite flying, inevitably end up eating ice cream for breakfast. If you wanted to join us, no pressure, no expectations, just company. The offer's open. It should have been impossible. They'd met 12 hours ago. This whole thing was built on pretense and desperation. But standing in her doorway with Evan's kindness hanging between them, Hannah found herself wanting to say yes. What time? She asked. 9. I'll text you the meeting spot. Evan stepped back. Get some sleep, Hannah. You survived today. That counts for something. He walked away, and Hannah stood in her doorway watching him go, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Not hope exactly, but maybe the memory of what hope used to feel like. Inside her apartment, she peeled off the midnight blue dress, washed the mascara from her face, and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked exhausted, fragile, human. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Made it home. Noah wants to know if you like Stegosaurus. Apparently this is very important information. Evan Hannah smiled despite everything. Texted back, tell Noah Stegosaurus are objectively the best dinosaurs. No contest. The response came immediately. He says you're officially cool. High praise. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Hannah climbed into bed, pulled the covers up, and let herself imagine it. A park, a little boy, a man who'd held her together when she fell apart. No performance, no proving, just people being honest about their damage and showing up anyway. For the first time in 6 months, Hannah fell asleep without crying. And somewhere across the city, in a modest house with dinosaur posters and mismatched furniture, Evan Cole tucked his son into bed and wondered what the hell he was doing, inviting a stranger into their carefully protected life. But he'd seen that look in Hannah's eyes, that desperate, drowning need to matter to someone. And he'd worn that look himself enough times to recognize salvation when it appeared, even if salvation came in the form of a fake relationship that was already starting to feel dangerously real. Sunday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind that made Seattle feel like a promise instead of a threat. Hannah woke at 7:30 with her stomach in knots, staring at her phone like it might explode. The text from Evan sat there, innocent and terrifying. Discovery Park main entrance, 9 a.m. Noah's bringing bread for the ducks. Fair warning, he takes this very seriously. She'd spent half the night wondering if she should cancel. What was she doing, inserting herself into a 5-year-old's life? Meeting a man she barely knew in a park like this was normal, like yesterday's performance had somehow translated into actual connection. But every time she reached for her phone to type an excuse, she remembered Evan's hand steady against her back. The way he'd held her while she broke apart in the rain, the fact that he'd looked at her damage and hadn't flinched. Hannah pulled on jeans and a soft green sweater, tied her hair back, and tried to look like someone who belonged in a child's orbit. Natural. Uncomplicated. Not a woman who'd spent yesterday proving she was fundamentally broken. The drive to Discovery Park took 20 minutes through neighborhoods still quiet with weekend slowness. Hannah parked near the main entrance and immediately spotted them. Evan standing beside a bench, holding the hand of a small boy whose entire attention was focused on a paper bag clutched against his chest like treasure. Noah was smaller than Hannah had imagined, all dark curls and serious brown eyes, wearing a t-shirt with a stegosaurus on it and light-up sneakers that blinked with every step. He looked up as Hannah approached, and she watched his expression cycle through curiosity, uncertainty, and something that might have been evaluation. "Hi," Hannah said, suddenly aware that she had no idea how to talk to children. "You must be Noah." The boy pressed closer to Evan's leg, shy but not frightened. "Do you really like stegosaurus?" The lisp made Hannah's chest ache. "I really do. They're the coolest dinosaurs." Noah's eyes narrowed with the seriousness of someone defending an important position. "Cooler than T-Rex?" "Way cooler. T-Rex just has big teeth. Stegosaurus has armor plates and a tail weapon. That's basically a dinosaur superhero." Noah looked at Evan. "She's white, Daddy." "She is," Evan agreed, and when his eyes met Hannah's, the warmth there was entirely real. "Hannah, this is Noah. Noah, this is my friend Hannah. She's going to hang out with us today, if that's okay with you." "Does she know about ducks?" Noah asked suspiciously. "Not as much as you do," Hannah admitted. "You'll probably have to teach me." This was apparently the correct answer. Noah's whole face brightened. "Okay, but you have to be quiet. Ducks get scared of loud people." They walked towards the pond, Noah between them, chattering about proper duck feeding technique with the intensity of a tenured professor. You had to throw the bread in small pieces. You had to wait for all the ducks to get some before throwing more. You absolutely could not chase them because that was mean and also against the rules. "He takes this very seriously," Evan murmured. "I can see that." Hannah watched Noah carefully portion out bread from his bag, his little face scrunched in concentration. "How long have you been doing this?" "Since he was 3. My dad used to take me here when I was his age. Seemed like the kind of tradition worth keeping." Evan's voice carried affection and something else, the weight of trying to be enough parent for 2 people. "Most weekends it's just us. This is different." "Good different or terrifying different?" "Both." Evan glanced at her. "You didn't have to come. I know yesterday was a lot." "Yesterday was everything." Hannah kept her voice low enough that Noah wouldn't hear. "And I woke up this morning thinking I should cancel, make up an excuse, protect you and him from my mess. But then I thought about spending another Sunday alone in my apartment, and I wanted to be here. Is that selfish?" "It's human." Evan's hand found the small of her back again, brief and steadying. "We all need people. That's not selfish. That's survival." Noah had attracted a small crowd of ducks and was narrating their arrival with delighted commentary. "That one's Gerald. He's the boss duck. And that's Fwances. She's pretty but mean. And those babies all new. They don't have names yet." "How do you know Gerald's the boss?" Hannah asked, crouching beside him. "See how he pushes the other ducks? That's boss behavior." Noah threw a piece of bread with precision. "Gerald always eats Fiost. It's not nice, but that's how ducks are." Hannah bit back a smile. "You're very observant." "Daddy says observant means I notice stuff." Noah looked up at her, suddenly serious. "Do you notice stuff?" "Sometimes. I try to." "What do you notice right now?" The question caught Hannah off guard. She glanced around, the pond reflecting morning light, families scattered across the grass, Evan watching her with quiet curiosity. I noticed that Gerald might be the boss, but Frances gets just as much bread because she's smarter about positioning. And I noticed that you're really good at making sure everyone gets fed, not just the loud ducks. Noah considered this. The quiet ducks get hungry too. They do, Hannah agreed softly. Something passed between them. Understanding, recognition, the beginning of trust. Noah turned back to his ducks, apparently satisfied, and Hannah felt Evan's hand squeeze her shoulder briefly. They stayed at the pond until Noah's bread bag was empty and Gerald had waddled away with his entourage. Then they walked the main trail, Noah darting ahead to examine interesting rocks and report back on his findings with scientific seriousness. "That's igneous," he announced, presenting a gray stone to Evan. "See the speckles? Igneous always has speckles." "Where did you learn that?" Hannah asked. "Museum. We go every month." Noah pocketed the rock carefully. "Daddy says science is impotent, and also fun." "Your daddy's right." They ended up at a small playground, and Noah immediately claimed the swings. Evan pushed him with practiced ease, timing the rhythm perfectly, while Noah shrieked with delight and demanded to go higher. Hannah sat on a nearby bench, watching them, and felt something crack open in her chest. This was what she'd thought she'd lost forever. Not the nuclear family fantasy Margaret Porter worshipped, but this. Connection, presence, the simple reality of mattering to someone Sunday morning. "You okay?" Evan had materialized beside her while Noah transferred to the slide. "You went somewhere dark just now." "Not dark, just realizing what I thought I couldn't have." Hannah met his eyes. "Yesterday at the wedding, when Margaret talked about legacy and real families, I felt like she'd confirmed everything I'd been afraid of, that I was fundamentally insufficient. But watching you and Noah, I don't think she understands what family actually means." "She doesn't." Evan's voice carried certainty. "Family isn't genetics, it's showing up. It's feeding ducks and cutting toast wrong and holding someone while they fall apart. Margaret's version is performance. This," he gestured toward Noah, who was now trying to convince another child to trade rocks. "This is real." "Hannah," Noah called from the slide, "watch this." He went down the slide backward, giggling wildly, and Hannah applauded like he'd performed the Olympic feat. His smile was radiant, gap-toothed, entirely without guile. After the park, Evan suggested ice cream despite it being barely 10:30. "Sunday tradition," he explained, "breakfast of champions." They walked to a small shop near the park entrance, the kind of place with homemade waffle cones and flavors written on a chalkboard. Noah pressed his nose against the display case, debating between chocolate chip and strawberry with the gravity of someone choosing a mortgage. "What if I can't decide?" he asked Evan seriously. "Then you get a scoop of each." Noah's eyes went wide. "I can do that?" "It's Sunday. Anything's possible on Sunday." They sat outside at a picnic table, Noah working methodically through his double scoop while Evan and Hannah shared a cup of coffee ice cream. The morning had warmed into something almost spring-like, and for a moment Hannah let herself pretend this was ordinary, that she belonged here. "So," Evan said carefully, "yesterday, after we left, how are you doing with all of it?" Hannah watched Noah chase a drip down his cone. "Honestly, I woke up feeling like I survived a war. Exhausted, but somehow lighter. Like maybe showing up and leaving early was its own kind of victory." "It was." "Margaret probably thinks I proved her point, that I ran away because I couldn't handle seeing what I'll never have." "Margaret can think whatever she wants." Evan's voice was firm. "You showed up. You faced her. You left on your terms. That's not running away. That's choosing yourself." Noah looked up, ice cream on his nose. "Why are you sad?" Hannah blinked. "I'm not sad, sweetheart. Just thinking." "Daddy thinks a lot too. It makes his face look squunchy." Noah demonstrated, wrinkling his forehead in exaggerated concern. "Like this." Despite everything, Hannah laughed. "Does it help when he thinks?" "Sometimes. Sometimes he just needs a hug." Noah returned his attention to his ice cream, apparently satisfied with this analysis. Evan's expression was simultaneously amused and mortified. "Thank you for that psychological profile, buddy." You're welcome. They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, and Hannah felt the morning settling into something permanent in her memory. Not the wedding, not Margaret's cruelty, but this sunshine and sugar and a little boy who noticed when people looked sad. When they walked back to the parking lot, Noah's energy had finally started to flag. He held Evan's hand with one fist and clutched his bag of rocks with the other, yawning every few steps. Someone's going to need a nap, Evan observed. No naps, Noah protested without conviction. I'm not tired. Of course not. My mistake. At Hannah's car, Noah surprised her by letting go of Evan's hand and wrapping his small arms around her legs in a fierce hug. Thanks for coming, he said, muffled against her jeans. You can come next Sunday too if you want, if you know about ducks. Hannah's throat went tight. She crouched down to his level. I'd really like that, if it's okay with you and your dad. It's okay. Noah's seriousness returned. But next time you have to bring bread too. Gerald eats a lot. I'll bring extra bread just for Gerald. Good. Noah returned to Evan's side, satisfied. Daddy, can we watch Dinosaur Show when we get home? Absolutely. After you rest your eyes for a few minutes. Not a nap, though. Definitely not a nap. Evan met Hannah's gaze over Noah's head, and something passed between them that felt dangerously like intimacy. Not romance exactly, something quieter and more essential. Recognition, understanding, the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. I'll text you, Evan said. About next Sunday, or sooner if you need. He paused, seemed to recalibrate. If you want to talk, about anything. I'd like that. Hannah meant it. Thank you for this, for letting me intrude on your tradition. You didn't intrude? You fit. The words came out simple, honest, devastating in their sincerity. Hannah drove home with tears on her face, and Noah's gap-toothed smile burned into her memory. She'd spent months believing she'd lost her chance at this kind of connection, convinced that her broken body meant a broken future. But sitting in her apartment as afternoon light slanted through the windows, she realized Margaret had been wrong about everything that mattered. Family wasn't bloodlines. It was a 5-year-old who noticed when you looked sad. It was a man who held you together in the rain. It was showing up even when you were terrified, even when every voice in your head screamed that you'd ruin it. Her phone buzzed. A photo from Evan. Noah asleep on the couch, clutching a toy stegosaurus, his mouth slightly open. The caption read, "Definitely not napping, just resting his eyes for the next 2 hours." Thank you for today. Hannah texted back. Thank you for everything. Tell Noah I'm already planning my bread strategy for next week. The response came quickly. He'll take that very seriously. Fair warning, you've been promoted to official duck feeding assistant. It's a prestigious position. Hannah smiled, set her phone down, and did something she hadn't done in months. She opened her laptop and started working on a personal project, a series of illustrations about resilience, about finding family in unexpected places, about the difference between legacy and love. The images came easily, flowing from some place that had been frozen since the diagnosis. She worked through the afternoon, through dinner, through the slow descent into evening, and when she finally stopped, she had the beginning of something that felt true. Monday morning arrived with the familiar weight of routine. Hannah's design studio was small but successful, tucked into a shared workspace building in Capitol Hill. She worked primarily on branding for educational apps and children's content, which usually felt rewarding but today felt pointed. Everywhere she looked, images of families, happy children, parents who'd gotten the script right. Her business partner Kelly found her staring at a mood board for a new client, coffee going cold in her hand. You okay? You've been looking at that color palette for 20 minutes. Hannah blinked. Yeah, sorry, distracted. Kelly slid into the chair beside her, concern evident on her face. How was the wedding? Right. Hannah had told Kelly about it in a moment of weakness 2 weeks ago, during a late-night work session when the dread had been too heavy to carry alone. Kelly had offered to come with her, to fake food poisoning, to slash the tires on Hannah's car, anything to provide an escape route. I went, Hannah said, with a date, a fake date from a matchmaking service. Kelly's eyebrows shot up. You buried the lead there. Start from the beginning. So Hannah told her. The coffee shop, Evan's unexpected kindness, the wedding's calculated cruelty, the rain and the diner, and the way he'd held her together when she fell apart. She told her about Sunday morning, about Noah and the ducks and ice cream, and the way a 5-year-old's gap-toothed smile had somehow stitched something back together in her chest. Kelly listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through outrage at Margaret, sympathy for Hannah, and something that looked like cautious hope. "So," Kelly said finally, "you're seeing him again?" "I don't know. Maybe? It's complicated." Hannah rubbed her temples. "He has a son. A whole life. I'm a mess who needed rescuing at a wedding. What if I'm projecting? What if this feeling is just gratitude and loneliness and desperation wrapped up in a pretty package?" "Or," Kelly countered, "what if it's exactly what it feels like, connection with someone who sees you and doesn't run?" "That's terrifying. So is spending the rest of your life believing Margaret Porter's version of your worth?" Kelly's voice was gentle but firm. "You deserve this, Hannah. Whatever this turns out to be. You deserve someone who shows up." Hannah wanted to believe her. She'd spent so long internalizing the narrative that she was insufficient, that her value was tied to her reproductive capacity, that rewriting that story felt impossible. But the memory of Noah's hug, Evan's steady presence, the simple reality of mattering to someone Sunday morning, that felt like evidence against Margaret's cruelty. Her phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Noah wants to know if you like macaroni and cheese. Apparently this is critical information for meal planning purposes." Hannah's smile was automatic. "Tell him I love macaroni and cheese, especially the kind with the powdered cheese that turns everything neon orange. He says you have excellent taste. Also, we're making dinner Wednesday if you want to join. No pressure. Just pasta and a 5-year-old's commentary on why dinosaurs would have made terrible pets." Kelly was watching her with knowing eyes. "That's not the face of someone who's projecting." "Shut up," Hannah said, but she was still smiling. She texted back, "I'd love to. What time? And should I bring anything?" 6 p.m. Just yourself. And maybe your opinions on whether Triceratops could have been house-trained. Noah has theories. Wednesday evening, Hannah stood outside a modest craftsman house in Green Lake, holding a bottle of wine and second-guessing every choice that had led her here. The house was smaller than she'd expected, with a well-maintained lawn and a front porch decorated with chalk drawings of what appeared to be a fierce battle between various dinosaurs. The door opened before she could knock. Evan stood there in jeans and a t-shirt with flour on his sleeve, barefoot, smiling in a way that made Hannah's chest feel too small for her lungs. "You came," he said. "You invited me." "I did. But I've been half convinced all day you'd realize this was weird and cancel." He stepped back to let her in. "Fair warning, the house is a disaster. Noah's idea of helping with dinner involves more mess than actual assistance." The interior was exactly what Hannah had imagined if she'd let herself imagine it. Comfortable furniture that had seen real use, bookshelves crammed with children's books and adult novels in equal measure, framed photos of Evan and Noah at various ages, dinosaur toys scattered across every surface like a museum exhibit had exploded. And in the kitchen, perched on a step stool at the counter, Noah was wielding a wooden spoon like a weapon while wearing an apron 3 sizes too big. "Hannah!" He scrambled down and ran over, leaving floury footprints. "I'm making the sauce. It's Willie Hod, but Daddy says I'm doing good." "Great," Evan corrected gently. "You're doing great." "That's what I said." Noah grabbed Hannah's hand. "Come see, I'm a chef now." The kitchen was indeed a disaster. Flour dusted every surface, pasta water threatening to boil over, and something that might have been marinara sauce splattered across the backsplash. But it smelled incredible, and Noah's pride was so palpable that Hannah felt her earlier anxiety evaporate. "What can I do to help?" she asked. "Can you stew?" Noah presented her with the wooden spoon. "My arm gets tied." Hannah took the spoon and stirred the sauce, while Noah provided detailed instructions about proper technique. Evan moved around them with easy competence, draining pasta, checking garlic bread in the oven, somehow managing to clean as he went despite Noah's best efforts to spread chaos. "Wine?" Evan offered, pouring 2 glasses without waiting for an answer. "You'll need it." Noah's about to explain his dinosaur pet theory in exhaustive detail. heard that, Daddy. I know, buddy. I said it loud enough for you to hear. They ate at a small dining table covered with a vinyl cloth featuring, predictably, dinosaurs. Noah narrated the entire meal, explaining why different dinosaurs would or wouldn't make good pets with logic that was simultaneously flawed and irrefutable. Evan interjected corrections about historical accuracy that Noah mostly ignored. Hannah found herself laughing more than she had in months. Real laughter, not the performed kind. Noah was hilarious without trying to be, completely sincere in his convictions, and Evan's quiet commentary provided the perfect counterpoint to his son's enthusiasm. After dinner, Noah insisted on showing Hannah his room. It was an explosion of prehistoric life. Dinosaur bedding, glow-in-the-dark ceiling stars, posters identifying various species with scientific names Noah could mostly pronounce. He presented each treasure with the seriousness of a curator, explaining where each toy had come from and what made it special. "This one's from Guanpa," he said, holding up a worn plush triceratops. "I sleep with him every night. His name is Chompy, even though triceratops don't have big teeth. I was little when I named him." "Chompy's a great name," Hannah said seriously. "I know." Noah clutched the plush to his chest. "Do you have a favorite stuffed animal?" The question caught Hannah off guard. "I did when I was your age, a bear named Pancake." "That's a silly name for a bear." "It is," Hannah agreed, "but he was very flat from too many hugs." Noah considered this. "That's a good reason." He yawned, wide enough that Hannah could see all his missing teeth. "I'm getting sleepy. That means bedtime soon. How about now?" Evan appeared in the doorway. "Say goodnight to Hannah. You can see her again soon." "Promise?" Noah looked at Hannah with sudden intensity. "Promise," Hannah said, and meant it. She waited in the living room while Evan orchestrated bedtime, teeth brushing, pajamas. The complicated ritual of selecting which dinosaurs would sleep in the bed versus on the shelf. She could hear their voices through the wall, Evan reading a story with different voices for each character. Noah's occasional interruption with clarifying questions. When Evan finally emerged 20 minutes later, he looked exhausted and content in equal measure. "Sorry, bedtime is a whole production." "Don't apologize. It's—" Hannah paused, searching for the right word. "It's lovely, all of it." Evan poured them both more wine and sat on the couch beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. The house was quiet now, just the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic. "Can I ask you something?" Evan said. "And you can tell me to mind my own business if I'm overstepping." "Okay, what happens now? With Marcus, with the wedding, with all of it?" He turned to face her. "I know Saturday was survival, but what comes after survival?" Hannah stared into her wine glass. "I don't know, I keep thinking I should feel closure or relief or something definitive. Instead, I just feel sad. Not for losing Marcus, for losing the version of myself who believed she could earn her way into belonging." "You don't have to earn belonging," Evan said quietly. "That's not how it works." "Then how does it work?" "You just show up, honestly, and find people who show up for you the same way." His hand found hers on the couch cushion between them. "Like you showed up on Sunday even though you were terrified. Like you showed up tonight for macaroni and cheese and dinosaur theories. That's belonging, not performance. Presence." Hannah's throat was tight. "What if I'm not good at that? Showing up without armor?" "Then you practice, and you trust that the people who matter won't weaponize your vulnerability." Evan's thumb traced circles on her palm. "I know we barely know each other. I know this whole thing started as performance. But somewhere between the wedding and the ducks and tonight, Hannah, this stopped being fake for me." The confession hung in the air between them. Hannah's heart was beating too fast, her breath shallow. This was the moment to protect herself, to retreat behind walls that had kept her safe, if lonely. But looking at Evan, his honesty, his steadiness, the way he'd held her together and invited her into his life without demanding she be anything other than herself, Hannah found she didn't want safety. She wanted this, whatever this was becoming. "It stopped being fake for me too," she whispered. Evan's smile was slow, relieved, devastating. Yeah. Hannah set down her wine glass with trembling hands. which is terrifying because I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know how to date someone with a child. I don't know how to trust that this won't fall apart the minute you realize how damaged I am. I don't. Evan kissed her, soft and careful and entirely without hesitation. His hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. You're not damaged. You're human, and I don't need perfect. I need honest. I can do honest, Hannah managed. I think. Then that's enough. Evan kissed her again, deeper this time, and Hannah let herself fall into it, into him, into the possibility that maybe Margaret had been wrong about everything that mattered. They stayed on the couch for another hour, talking in the easy way of people learning each other's landscapes. Evan told her about his work. He'd been vague at the wedding, which suddenly made sense because he wasn't actually a consultant. He was the CEO of an education technology company he'd built from the ground up, focused on making learning accessible for kids who learn differently. He'd kept it quiet at the wedding because he didn't want his money to become the story. I live modestly on purpose, he explained. After my ex left, I realized everything we'd built was about impressing people who didn't matter. The big house, the expensive car, the right neighborhood, none of it made us happy. So when I rebuilt my life with Noah, I chose different priorities. This house, this life, it's small, but it's ours. It's perfect, Hannah said, and meant it. She told him about her work, about the illustration she'd started on Sunday, about the way creating something personal had felt like reclaiming a part of herself she'd thought was lost forever. I'd like to see them, Evan said, if you want to share. They're rough, not finished. I don't need finished. I just want to see what you're creating. The trust implicit in that request made Hannah's chest ache. She pulled up the files on her phone, showed him the sketches. Abstract figures finding connection, weeds becoming flowers, broken pieces forming new wholes. Evan studied them with the same careful attention he gave everything. These are beautiful, genuinely. You should do something with them. Like what? I don't know. But they're too good to sit on your laptop. They're the kind of thing people need to see. He handed back her phone. You have a gift, Hannah, for seeing beauty in survival. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. Hannah felt something crack open in her chest, some frozen place she'd been protecting for so long she'd forgotten it was there. When she finally left at 11, Evan walked her to her car, kissed her goodnight with a gentleness that felt like a promise, and made her swear to text when she got home safe. The drive back to her apartment felt different. Seattle's streets were familiar but transformed, like she was seeing them through new eyes. Hannah thought about Noah's hug, Evan's honesty, the way a fake relationship had become the most real thing in her life. She thought about Margaret Porter's cruelty, about Marcus's betrayal, about all the ways she'd been told she wasn't enough, and she realized that none of those voices mattered anymore. They'd never mattered. They'd just been loud enough to drown out the truth. She was enough, exactly as she was, and she was building something real with people who saw her and chose to stay. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into her parking spot. A text from Evan. Noah woke up asking if you liked his room. I told him you thought it was awesome. He's back asleep with Chompy and a smile on his face. Thank you for tonight. For all of it. Hannah texted back, thank you. For letting me in. For seeing me. For making me believe I deserve this. The response came immediately. You do. Never doubt that. Never doubt. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Hannah went to bed believing it might actually be true. The next 2 weeks unfolded with a rhythm Hannah hadn't known she was missing. Weekday evenings meant texts from Evan, photos of Noah's latest dinosaur arrangement, questions about her day, quiet conversations that stretched past midnight. Weekends meant Discovery Park, ice cream, and the gradual integration into routines that had once belonged only to father and son. Hannah learned that Noah was particular about his toast being cut into triangles, that he believed clouds were made of marshmallow, and that he had an uncanny ability to sense when adults were hiding their emotions. She learned that Evan started every morning at 5 a.m. reading industry reports with terrible coffee, that he'd taught himself to braid hair through YouTube videos, and that he carried a photo of infant Noah in his wallet even though his phone held thousands. She also learned that falling in love while terrified was its own special kind of torture. It was a Thursday afternoon when Kelly cornered her in the studio kitchen, arms crossed, expression knowing. "You're glowing," Kelly said flatly. "It's disgusting. Tell me everything." Hannah tried for innocent. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You've checked your phone 17 times in the past hour. You smiled at a color palette. Yesterday, you hummed while formatting a presentation deck." Kelly grabbed 2 coffees from the machine and slid one across the counter. "You're either in love or having a psychotic break, and I'm really hoping it's the first one." Hannah took the coffee, buying time. The truth was she'd been trying not to label what was happening between her and Evan because labels made things real, and real things could break. But sitting across from Kelly, who'd witnessed every stage of her unraveling after Marcus, Hannah found she wanted to say it out loud. "I think I'm falling in love with him," she admitted quietly. "Which is insane because it's been 2 weeks. You can't fall in love in 2 weeks." "Why not?" Kelly's voice was gentler now. "You can fall in hate in 5 minutes. Why is love supposed to take longer?" "Because love is supposed to be rational, careful, built on shared history and compatible values and all the things the relationship articles say matter." "Hannah, you met him while asking him to fake a relationship so you could survive your ex's wedding. Nothing about this has been rational." Kelly leaned forward. "But I've watched you these past 2 weeks, and you look more alive than you have in months, maybe years. So maybe rational is overrated." Hannah stared into her coffee. "His son drew me a picture yesterday. It's me and him and Evan feeding ducks. He used every color in his crayon box and got the proportions completely wrong, and I cried for 20 minutes looking at it. Because? Because I'm in it. In his picture of his family. Like I belong there." Hannah's voice cracked. "What if I let myself believe that and then it falls apart? What if Evan realizes I'm too broken? What if Noah gets attached and I can't give him what he needs? What if it works?" Kelly interrupted. "What if you let yourself have this and it turns out to be exactly what you deserve?" The possibility felt dangerous. Hannah had spent so long protecting herself from hope that imagining it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff. Her phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Emergency. Noah insists dinosaurs had birthdays, and we need to celebrate Stegosaurus Day this Saturday. Your presence is required. Also, there will be cake, possibly dinosaur-shaped. I make no promises about my baking skills." Hannah smiled despite herself. Texted back, "What time should I arrive for this important paleontological celebration?" "Noon. Bring your appetite and willingness to wear a party hat. Noah's already planned the decorations." "I'm afraid." Kelly was watching her with insufferable smugness. "Yeah, you're definitely not in love." "Shut up," Hannah said, but she was already mentally cataloging what she knew about Stegosaurus to help with party planning. Saturday arrived with rain that couldn't quite commit to being a storm. Typical Seattle ambivalence. Hannah stood in a party supply store at 10 a.m., staring at dinosaur decorations and experiencing a level of anxiety that felt wildly disproportionate to the situation. She wanted to bring something Noah would love, something that proved she was paying attention, something that justified her presence in their celebration. She ended up with Stegosaurus plates, matching napkins, a banner that proclaimed "Roar, it's your day," in glittering letters, and a stuffed Stegosaurus that was anatomically questionable but undeniably cute. At a bookstore down the street, she found a children's book about a lonely Stegosaurus learning to make friends. The metaphor wasn't lost on her. Evan's house looked like a dinosaur had exploded across it. Streamers in green and purple hung from every surface. Balloon clusters dotted the living room, and Noah stood in the center of it all wearing a homemade construction paper Stegosaurus tail, his face painted with green spots. "Hannah!" He launched himself at her legs. "You came! Look at my tail! Daddy made it, and it's perfect!" The tail was objectively lopsided and held together with enough tape to construct a small building, but Noah's pride made it a masterpiece. "It's the best tail I've ever seen," Hannah said seriously. "Very authentic spike placement." "I know." Noah grabbed her hand. "Come see the cake. Daddy made it himself, and it's a little bit weird, but also good." The cake was indeed weird. A vaguely dinosaur-shaped creation covered in green frosting with chocolate chip scales and candy eyes that seemed to look in different directions. It was also clearly made with tremendous effort and love. Evan stood in the kitchen doorway, flour in his hair, frosting on his shirt, looking simultaneously exhausted and proud. Before you judge, remember that I'm a tech CEO, not a pastry chef. It's perfect, Hannah said, and meant it. It's a disaster, Noah corrected cheerfully, but a yummy disaster. They spent the afternoon in gleeful chaos. Musical chairs to dinosaur songs. Pin the spike on the Stegosaurus, which resulted in spikes on the ceiling, floor, and one memorable placement on the lamp. Noah opened his presents with appropriate reverence, clutching the stuffed Stegosaurus Hannah brought like she'd given him a bar of gold. Her name is Spike, he announced. She's Chompy's friend now. They were both going to sleep in my bed and protect me from nightmares. Good plan, Hannah said, throat tight. When it came time for cake, Noah insisted everyone wear party hats and sing happy birthday to Stegosaurus. They obliged, Evan's baritone and Hannah's soprano blending awkwardly but earnestly, while Noah conducted with a plastic fork. Make a wish, Noah demanded when the song ended. Stegosaurus can't make wishes, buddy. They're extinct. Then you make a wish for them, Daddy. Evan closed his eyes, and Hannah watched his expression soften into something that looked like hope. When he opened them, he was looking directly at her. They ate cake that was simultaneously dry and too sweet and absolutely delicious. Noah's face ended up more frosted than clean, and when he finally crashed from sugar overload around 3 p.m., Evan carried him to his room for a definitely not a nap. Hannah started cleaning up the wreckage, gathering paper plates and deflating balloons. Evan returned 15 minutes later and found her elbow-deep in soapy water washing dishes. You don't have to do that, he said. I want to. This is... Hannah paused, searching for words that didn't sound desperate. This was really special. Thank you for including me. Evan moved beside her, grabbing a dish towel. They worked in companionable silence for a few minutes, the domestic intimacy of it settling into Hannah's bones like warmth. Can I tell you something? Evan said finally. And you can tell me I'm moving too fast or reading this wrong. Hannah's hand stilled in the water. Okay. When I made that wish on the cake, I wished that this, you, me, Noah, these Saturdays, I wished it could be permanent, not pretend, not temporary. He set down the towel, turned to face her fully. I know it's only been 2 weeks. I know we started this as performance. But Hannah, I haven't felt this sure about anything since the day Noah was born. The confession hung between them, huge and terrifying, and everything Hannah wanted but was afraid to reach for. I'm scared, she whispered. I'm so scared of believing this is real and then having it taken away. I'm scared too. Evan's hands framed her face, gentle and certain. I'm scared of screwing this up. Scared that my baggage and yours will be too much. Scared that I'm a package deal with a 5-year-old who needs stability, and asking you to sign up for that is selfish. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear make my decisions instead of hope. Hannah felt tears spilling over, hot and inevitable. What if I can't give Noah what he needs? What if I'm not enough mother figure, or I make mistakes, or you're already giving him what he needs? Evan interrupted firmly. You show up. You see him. You bought a scientifically questionable stuffed Stegosaurus because you knew it would make him smile. That's what matters. Not biology, not performance. Just caring enough to try. I've never done this before. Been part of a family. Neither have I. Not really. My parents loved me, but they were distant. My ex wanted the appearance of family without the reality. This, what we're building, I'm making it up as I go too. Evan's smile was crooked, vulnerable. But I want to make it up with you, if you'll let me. Hannah kissed him instead of answering, tasting sugar and hope and the terrifying possibility of happiness. Evan responded immediately, his hand sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, months of loneliness and longing compressed into this moment of choosing each other. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Evan's forehead rested against hers. Is that a yes? He asked. That's a terrified yes. Hannah laughed wetly. A yes that comes with emotional baggage and trust issues and probably a lot of therapy. I'll take it. Evan kissed her again, softer this time. All of it. They finished the dishes together, Hannah washing and Evan drying, and the ordinary domesticity of it felt like its own kind of revolution. This was what Margaret Porter had never understood. Family wasn't grand gestures or perfect genetics. It was standing side by side, doing mundane tasks and choosing to keep showing up. Noah emerged from his room an hour later, hair mussed, Spike clutched under one arm and Chompy under the other. I wasn't sleeping, he announced immediately. Just westing my eyes like Daddy does. Of course, Hannah agreed. Very different things. Noah climbed onto the couch between them, arranging his stuffed animals carefully. Can we watch the dinosaur show? The one about the museum that comes alive? Again? Evan groaned theatrically. We've seen it 14 times. 15 is bet you than 14. That's just math, Daddy. They watched the movie. Hannah had indeed seen it before, but found it entirely charming through Noah's enthusiastic narration. He provided running commentary on scientific accuracy, character motivations, and whether various dinosaurs would be good friends. Halfway through, he shifted to lean against Hannah's side. She froze, uncertain, until Evan caught her eye and smiled. Carefully, Hannah put her arm around Noah's small shoulders. He snuggled closer without looking away from the screen. "You was soft," he said matter-of-factly, "like a good pillow." "Thank you?" Hannah's voice came out strangled with emotion. "You we welcome." By the time the credits rolled, Noah was asleep again, this time draped across both their laps. Evan carefully extracted him and carried him back to bed, tucking him in with practiced efficiency. When he returned, Hannah was standing by the window, arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the rain. "Hey," as Evan came up behind her, hands gentle on her shoulders. "Where'd you go?" "I was just thinking about how different my life looks now versus a month ago." Hannah leaned back against him. "A month ago, I was planning how to survive Marcus's wedding, convinced I'd never have this, family, belonging, someone who sees me and doesn't run. And now I'm standing in your living room wearing a party hat, covered in frosting, with your son's weight still imprinted on my lap, and I'm terrified of how much I want this." "Wanting isn't weakness," Evan said quietly. "It's brave." "It doesn't feel brave. It feels like standing on a cliff waiting to fall." "Then I'll stand on the cliff with you." Evan turned her to face him. "And if we fall together." "But Hannah, I don't think we're falling. I think we're building, one Saturday at a time, one dinner, one terrible cake, one moment of choosing this, even when it's scary." Hannah kissed him because words felt insufficient. They stood there in the fading afternoon light, holding each other like anchors, and Hannah let herself imagine a future where this wasn't temporary, where she belonged here, where fear didn't get to make her decisions anymore. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it until it buzzed again, insistent. Evan stepped back, giving her space to check. It was a text from a number she hadn't deleted but hadn't heard from in months. "Marcus, I heard you came to the wedding with someone. I'm glad you're moving on. Can we talk? I owe you a real apology. Coffee this week?" Hannah stared at the message, feeling the careful peace she'd built start to fracture. Evan was watching her, concern evident. "It's Marcus," she said flatly. "He wants to meet for coffee. To apologize." Evan's jaw tightened. "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know." Hannah sat on the couch, phone heavy in her hand. "Part of me wants to tell him exactly what his mother did, how his cowardice broke me, how much damage he caused. Part of me wants to delete this and never think about him again. And the other part? Wants closure." Hannah looked up at Evan. "I've spent 6 months angry and hurt and convinced I was insufficient. Maybe hearing him apologize would help me let it go." Evan sat beside her, close but not crowding. "Then meet him. Get your closure. But Hannah, you don't owe him forgiveness. You don't owe him anything except honesty if you choose to give it. Will you—" Hannah paused, hating how small her voice sounded. "Would you be okay with me doing this? It's not about me being okay. It's about what you need." Evan took her hand. "But I'm here, before, during, after, whatever you need." Hannah texted back before she could second-guess herself. "Monday, 10 a.m., Common Grounds. This is your chance to say what you need to say. Make it count." The response came quickly. Thank you. I'll be there. The rest of the weekend passed in a blur of normalcy and anxiety. Sunday morning brought the usual duck feeding, but Hannah's mind was elsewhere. Noah noticed. You be quiet, he said, studying her with those too perceptive brown eyes. Are you sad? A little, Hannah admitted, but it's the kind of sad that gets better. Daddy says sad feelings all like Wayne. They come, but they also go away. Noah handed her a piece of bread. Feeding ducks helps. Scientifically proven. Is it now? I proved it myself, with experiments. Hannah laughed despite everything and let herself be present. Let Noah's chatter and Evan's quiet steadiness remind her that whatever happened with Marcus, she had this. She had people who chose her without conditions. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and Hannah's stomach in knots. She dressed carefully, professional, put together, armor that said she'd survived and thrived. Kelly offered to come as backup, but Hannah declined. This was something she needed to do alone. Common Grounds looked exactly the same as it had 3 weeks ago, when she'd met Evan for the first time. The irony wasn't lost on her. She arrived 15 minutes early, ordered coffee she wouldn't drink, and claimed the same corner table where she'd asked a stranger to pretend to love her. Marcus walked in at exactly 10 a.m. He looked thinner than she remembered, tired around the eyes, wearing the navy suit he'd always claimed was lucky. When he saw her, something crossed his face. Regret, maybe, or recognition of what he'd lost. Hannah. He sat across from her without asking permission. Thank you for meeting me. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Hannah kept her voice level. You have 20 minutes. Say what you came to say. Marcus flinched at her tone but nodded. I've been thinking about this conversation for months, rehearsing it. But now that I'm here, everything I planned sounds inadequate. He took a breath. I'm sorry for how I ended things, for being a coward, for letting my mother's opinions matter more than your feelings. You deserved better than what I gave you. The apology landed hollow. Hannah had imagined this moment countless times. The vindication, the validation, the satisfaction of hearing him admit fault. Instead, she just felt tired. You're right, she said. I did deserve better. I deserved honesty when you realized you wanted biological children more than you wanted me. I deserved not to be humiliated at your wedding while your mother gave speeches about legacy and the perfect woman. I deserved basic human decency. I know. Marcus looked genuinely miserable. My mother, she shouldn't have invited you. That was cruel. I didn't know she'd done it until after the RSVPs came back, and by then what? It was too awkward to uninvite me? Hannah's anger surprised her with its heat. Marcus, your mother spent 4 years making it clear I wasn't good enough for your family, and you let her. You stood beside me and said it didn't matter, and then you proved with your actions that it mattered more than anything. You're right. Marcus's hands twisted on the table. I was weak. I let her influence me when I should have chosen you. But Hannah, you have to understand, she's my mother. The legacy stuff, the family expectations, that's been drilled into me since birth. Breaking away from that felt impossible. So instead you broke me. The words hung between them, stark and true. Marcus looked away, unable to meet her eyes. I didn't mean to, he said quietly. I convinced myself that ending things was kinder than dragging it out. That you'd find someone who could give you what you wanted, that I was setting you free. You were protecting yourself, Hannah corrected, from the hard conversation, from disappointing your mother, from having to choose between your family's approval and the woman you claimed to love. Don't rewrite it as noble when it was just cowardice. Marcus absorbed this, and Hannah watched him recognize the truth of it. Some part of her had wanted him to argue, to defend himself, to give her someone to fight. Instead, he just looked defeated. You're right, he said again. About all of it. And I'm sorry, genuinely. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I let the best thing in my life walk away because I was too scared to stand up to my mother. Hannah waited for vindication, for satisfaction, for some sense of closure that would make the past 6 months worth it. Instead, she just felt empty. Is that all? She asked. Marcus looked startled. I guess I hoped we could be friends eventually. That you could forgive me. Friends. Hannah laughed without humor. Marcus, you didn't just break up with me. You let me believe I was fundamentally defective. You watched me internalize your mother's cruelty and said nothing. You moved on in 8 months with someone who could give you exactly what I couldn't, and you invited me to watch you celebrate it. That's not something you come back from with coffee and apologies. Hannah, I don't forgive you. The words came clear and certain. Maybe someday I will. Maybe I'll reach a place where your choices don't matter to me at all. But today, I don't forgive you. And I don't want to be friends. Marcus looked like she'd slapped him. Then why did you come? Because I needed to see that you're just a man who made selfish choices, not the arbiter of my worth, not the reason I'm insufficient, just a man who chose comfort over courage. Hannah stood, gathering her bag. I spent 6 months believing your judgment of me mattered, believing that if I just tried harder, proved myself more, I could earn the love I deserved. But I was wrong. Love isn't earned. It's freely given by people who see you and choose you anyway. And you found someone like that. Marcus's voice was bitter. The guy at the wedding. Yes. Hannah thought of Evan holding her while she broke. Noah's gap-toothed smile. Saturday mornings that felt like home. I found someone who sees my damage and doesn't run, who makes me believe I'm exactly enough, who's teaching me that family is about showing up, not biology. I'm happy for you. Marcus didn't sound happy. He sounded like a man realizing exactly what he'd lost. I don't need your happiness. I don't need your approval or your apology or your friendship. Hannah's voice was steady, final. I need you to understand that what you did mattered, that your choices had consequences, that I'm standing here stronger than you left me, but that doesn't erase the damage. She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. One more thing. Your mother was at the wedding watching me like I'd confirmed everything she suspected. But Marcus, I need you to know she was wrong about me, about what makes someone worthy, about legacy and bloodlines and all her dynastic bullshit, and the fact that you believed her over me says everything about who you are. She left before he could respond, stepping out into Seattle rain that felt cleansing instead of oppressive. Her phone buzzed immediately, a text from Evan. How'd it go? Noah and I are at the park if you want company, or we can give you space, whatever you need. Hannah looked at the message, at the photo attached of Noah holding a dandelion bouquet, and felt something settle in her chest. This was what mattered, not Marcus's regrets or Margaret's judgments. This. People who showed up, people who chose her. She texted back. On my way. Tell Noah I love dandelions. And Evan? Thank you for being exactly who you are. The response came quickly. Always. We're waiting. Hannah drove to Discovery Park through rain that was finally committing to being a storm. She found them under a covered pavilion, Noah arranging his dandelions into complex patterns, while Evan watched with patient amusement. Hannah! Noah ran to her, rain boots splashing. Look what I picked. They were for you because Daddy says you like them. Hannah accepted the bedraggled bouquet, slightly crushed from being carried, perfect in their imperfection. They're beautiful. Thank you, sweetheart. Noah beamed. Daddy says dandelions are actually viewy strong because everyone tries to kill them, but they keep growing, like supu flowers. Exactly like superflowers. Hannah's voice was thick with emotion. Evan pulled her aside while Noah returned to his flower arranging. You okay? I think so. Hannah leaned into him, letting his steadiness anchor her. It wasn't what I expected. The apology felt empty, like words he thought he should say without really understanding why they mattered. Did it give you closure? No, but it gave me clarity. Hannah looked up at him. I spent so long wanting him to see my worth, to regret losing me, to understand what he threw away. But standing there listening to him apologize, I realized I don't need his validation. I already know my worth. You and Noah taught me that. Evan kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. You taught yourself. We just reminded you. They stayed at the park until the rain made it impossible, then piled into Evan's car with Noah chattering about puddle science and Hannah holding wilted dandelions like they were roses. At Evan's house, they made hot chocolate while Noah provided detailed instructions on proper marshmallow distribution. Exactly 3 big ones or 6 little ones, he explained seriously. That's the rule. Who made that rule? Hannah asked. Me. I'm the hot chocolate boss. They drank their carefully measured hot chocolate on the couch while rain drummed against the windows. Noah wedged himself between them, content and sticky, narrating an elaborate story about dinosaurs who lived in clouds and only came down during storms. Hannah's phone buzzed. Kelly checking in. How'd it go? Do I need to slash anyone's tires? Hannah smiled and texted back one-handed. It went exactly how it needed to. I'm good. Better than good. Translation. You're with Evan and the tiny human? Yes. Good. You deserve this. All of it. Hannah set her phone aside and let herself sink into the moment. Noah's warm weight against her side, Evan's arm around her shoulders, the rain creating a cocoon of safety around them. This was family, not the version Margaret Porter worshipped or Marcus had promised, but something better, something real. Can I tell you something? Noah said suddenly, looking up at Hannah with chocolate on his upper lip. Always. I'm welly glad Daddy met you. Because before you, he was lonely sometimes. I could tell even though he pretended he wasn't. Noah's voice was matter-of-fact, devastating in its honesty. But now he smiles like actually happy smiles, not the pretend ones. Hannah's throat closed. She looked at Evan over Noah's head and saw her own emotion reflected in his eyes. I'm really glad I met your daddy too, she managed. And you've both made my life so much better. That's because we awesome, Noah said with complete confidence. That's just science. And despite everything, despite Marcus and Margaret and months of believing she was insufficient, Hannah laughed. Real laughter that came from someplace deep and healing. Because this 5-year-old in dinosaur pajamas was right. They were awesome. And somehow, impossibly, she belonged with them. The afternoon dissolved into easy domesticity. Noah insisted on teaching Hannah his elaborate handshake, which involved approximately 17 steps and changed every time they practiced. Evan made an early dinner of grilled cheese and tomato soup, and they ate at the table with Noah providing commentary on sandwich construction technique. When it came time for Hannah to leave, Noah wrapped his arms around her waist and held on tight. You we coming back, White? His voice was smaller than usual, uncertain in a way that made Hannah's heart crack. She crouched to his level. I'm coming back, I promise. Every Sunday for ducks, and whenever your daddy invites me, and anytime you want to show me your dinosaur collection. What if you change your mind? What if you decide you don't like us anymore? The fear in his question was so raw, so clearly born from his mother's abandonment, that Hannah had to fight back tears. She took his small hands in hers. Noah, listen to me. I'm not going anywhere. I like you and your daddy more than I've liked anyone in a very long time. And when I make promises, I keep them, okay? Noah studied her face, looking for lies. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Okay, but you have to pinky promise. Those are the strongest promises. Hannah hooked her pinky with his. Pinky promise. Good. Noah hugged her again, fierce and trusting. See you Sunday. Evan walked her to her car while Noah waved from the window. The rain had softened to mist, and the evening air smelled like wet earth and possibility. Thank you, Evan said quietly, for what you said to him. He needed to hear that. I meant it. Every word. Hannah turned to face him. I know we're moving fast. I know this is complicated. But Evan, I'm all in. Whatever this becomes, wherever it goes, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you and Noah and these Saturdays and the possibility that maybe I get to keep this. Evan kissed her like she'd given him something precious. You get to keep this, all of it, for as long as you want it. Forever might be too long, Hannah said against his mouth. Forever sounds perfect. She drove home through Seattle streets that finally felt like they were leading somewhere, instead of just away from something. Her apartment was quiet and empty, but it didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt like a place she returned to between moments that mattered. Hannah put the wilted dandelions in water, knowing they wouldn't last but wanting to preserve them anyway. She opened her laptop and looked at the illustrations she'd started weeks ago, images of resilience and survival and finding beauty in broken places. Then she started something new, A children's book about a lonely stegosaurus who thought she had to be a T-Rex to matter, until she met a kind Triceratops and his small ankylosaur son who taught her that being exactly who she was had always been enough. The story flowed easily, illustrated with her whole heart. And as Hannah worked through the evening, she thought about Marcus's apology, Margaret's cruelty, and the 6 months she'd spent believing she was insufficient. None of it mattered anymore. She'd survived. She'd found her people, and she was finally, impossibly, learning to believe she deserved the love they offered. That night, she fell asleep with her phone on the pillow beside her, Evan's last text still glowing on the screen. Sweet dreams. Noah says, "Don't forget bread for Gerald. Apparently he's been asking about you." The duck, not Noah. Though Noah's been asking about you too. We both have. Sleep well, Hannah. You're exactly where you belong. And for the first time since her diagnosis, since Marcus's betrayal, since Margaret's calculated cruelty, Hannah believed it might actually be true. 3 weeks later, Hannah sat in Evan's living room at 2 a.m., watching him pace while Noah slept peacefully down the hall, oblivious to the storm brewing in the house. "I should have told you sooner," Evan said for the 4th time, running his hands through his hair until it stood in agitated peaks. I didn't know how. I didn't want you to think I'd been lying this whole time." Hannah pulled her knees to her chest, trying to process what he'd just revealed. "You're not just a CEO. You're the Evan Cole, EduTech Innovations, the company that revolutionized accessible learning software. The one profiled in Forbes last month as one of the fastest-growing education companies in the country." "Yes." Evan stopped pacing, looked at her with something that might have been fear. "I know I said I worked in education technology. That wasn't a lie. I just didn't mention the scope of it." "The scope being that you're worth, what did the article say? Somewhere north of $50 million? Hannah's voice came out flatter than she intended. "That's not scope, Evan. That's a different universe. It's just money." "It's never just money." Hannah stood, needing to move, to think, to understand why this felt like betrayal when technically he hadn't lied. "You let me think you were a consultant. You drove that beat-up Honda. You live in this modest house. You wore a suit that looked expensive but not obscene to Marcus's wedding. You presented yourself as normal." "I am normal." Evan's voice carried desperation. "That's the point. After my ex left, after I rebuilt my life with Noah, I realized I didn't want to be defined by money or success or what people expected from someone in my position. I wanted to be defined by how I showed up, how I parented, whether I was kind. And lying by omission is kind? I didn't lie." Evan moved toward her, stopped when she stepped back. "I just didn't lead with information that changes how people see me." "You of all people should understand that. You've spent months being reduced to your diagnosis, to what you can't do. I didn't want to be reduced to my bank account." The comparison landed like a slap. Hannah wanted to argue, to say it was different, but the truth lodged in her throat. She did understand. She'd spent years being dismissed as insufficient because of biology. The parallel was uncomfortable and accurate. "How did I find out?" she asked quietly. "Kelly saw the Forbes article, sent it to you with approximately 17 exclamation points and a text that said, 'Girl.'" Hannah had indeed received that text at midnight, had stared at the article photo of Evan in his office, a space that looked nothing like the modest house she knew, and felt her carefully constructed reality tilt sideways. "I need to think," she said. I don't know what I need, but I can't do this conversation at 2 a.m. in your living room while trying not to wake Noah." Pain flashed across Evan's face. "Are you leaving?" "I'm going home. To process. To figure out if this changes things." Hannah grabbed her bag, her keys, moving on autopilot. "I'm not saying we're done. I'm saying I need space to understand what this means." "Hannah, please," her voice cracked. "I've built my entire sense of us on honesty, on you being someone who sees past surfaces to what matters, and now I'm finding out you've been performing too, just differently than I was at the wedding." "It's not performance." Evan's voice was fierce. "Everything between us, that's real. The money doesn't change who I am with you and Noah." "Doesn't it?" Hannah was at the door now, hand on the knob. "You could have told me, any time in the past month. You chose not to. That's a choice that means something, Evan. I just need to figure out what. She left before he could respond, driving through empty Seattle streets with tears blurring her vision. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Evan calling, texting, trying to fix what felt irreparably cracked. Hannah turned it to silent and focused on getting home without crashing. Her apartment felt too quiet after weeks of Noah's chatter and Evan's steady presence. Hannah made tea she didn't drink and sat on her couch staring at nothing, trying to untangle her feelings from facts. Fact, Evan hadn't technically lied. He'd been vague about his work, yes, but she'd never directly asked for details. Fact, the money explained things she'd wondered about. The expensive watch he wore occasionally, the way he seemed unconcerned about bills, the casual mention of having good lawyers during their background-building conversation before the wedding. Fact, she felt betrayed anyway. The hurt sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and unmovable. Hannah had built her trust in Evan on his authenticity, on the way he'd presented himself as just another person navigating damage and trying his best. Finding out he'd been selectively editing his truth felt like discovering the foundation she'd built on was actually sand. Her phone lit up with another text. Against her better judgment, Hannah looked. I know you need space. I'm respecting that. But please know, the money is the least interesting thing about me. It's not who I am with Noah. It's not who I am with you. It's just a number that represents work I did building something that mattered. You're what matters now, you and Noah, and these past weeks that have been the realest thing in my life. Please don't let wealth I barely think about destroy something worth more than any bank account. Hannah read it 3 times, feeling her anger war with understanding. She wanted to stay mad, to hold on to the clarity of betrayal. But another part of her, the part that had watched Evan cut Noah's toast wrong and braid hair from YouTube tutorials and hold her while she broke, that part knew he was telling the truth. The money wasn't who he was, but the choice to hide it still mattered. She didn't text back. Instead, she opened her laptop and read the Forbes article in full. It was a profile of innovative tech leaders, focusing on Evan's company's mission to make learning accessible for students with different needs. The article mentioned his late nights personally testing software, his refusal to take the company public despite pressure, his insistence on keeping the technology affordable even when investors wanted higher profit margins. There was a quote that made Hannah's chest tight. My son struggles with certain types of learning. Traditional education wasn't built for kids like him. I started this company because I wanted him to have access to tools that met him where he was, not where the system expected him to be. Every student we help is a version of Noah getting the support he deserves. Hannah closed the laptop and pressed her palms against her eyes. This was the same man who'd held her at the wedding, who'd invited her into his Saturdays, who'd looked at her damage and chosen to stay. The money didn't change those truths, but the secrecy still felt like a wall between them. She fell asleep on the couch sometime around 4 a.m. and woke to sunlight and her phone ringing. Kelly's face filled the screen. Before you yell at me, Kelly said the moment Hannah answered, I genuinely thought you knew. Like, I assumed you'd Googled him at some point and were just being classy about not mentioning his net worth. I didn't Google him. Hannah's voice was rough with sleep. I took him at face value. Apparently that was naive. Or it was trusting. Kelly's voice softened. Hannah, I know this feels like a betrayal, but from where I'm sitting, it looks like a man who wanted to be seen for who he is rather than what he has. That's not manipulation. That's self-protection. He should have told me. Probably. But you should probably talk to him about why he didn't instead of making assumptions. Kelly paused. He's been texting me, by the way, very respectfully, asking if you're okay, if you need anything, if there's something he can do. He's not pushing. He's just worried. Hannah's throat went tight. What did you tell him? That you need time, and that if he hurts my best friend, I will absolutely destroy him professionally and personally. Kelly's tone was light, but Hannah heard the steel underneath. But also that you care about him. A lot. And that's probably why this hit so hard. After they hung up, Hannah sat with her cold tea and tried to imagine the conversation she needed to have with Evan. The anger had dulled into something more complicated. Hurt, yes, but also understanding. She'd spent years hiding parts of herself to avoid judgment. Who was she to condemn him for doing the same? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number that turned out to be Evan's mother. Hannah, I hope this isn't overstepping. Evan gave me your number weeks ago in case of emergencies with Noah. I'm texting because my son is a wreck, and while I don't interfere in his relationships, I thought you should know something. When Evan's ex-wife left, she told him she'd married him for his money and potential, not for who he was. She said that once she realized he valued principles over profit, that he'd never be the kind of wealthy she wanted, he wasn't worth staying for. She left him and their infant son because she thought she could do better. Evan has been terrified ever since that money is all anyone sees, that it's a test he'll fail either by having too much or not enough. I'm not excusing his secrecy, but I thought context might help. He chose you because you saw him, Hannah, just him, not the company or the bank account. Please don't let the money change that. Patricia Cole. Hannah read the message 4 times, feeling pieces click into place. Evan's modest house, the beat-up Honda, the way he'd described his ex as leaving because he wasn't enough. She'd assumed he meant emotionally or romantically, but maybe he'd meant financially, not enough in one direction, then suddenly too much in another once his company succeeded. She texted back, "Thank you for telling me. I'm not making any decisions yet, but this helps me understand." The response came quickly. "That's all I can ask. For what it's worth, I've never seen Evan as happy as he's been these past weeks. You and Noah light him up in a way nothing has since before his marriage fell apart. Whatever you decide, know that you've already given him something precious, the belief that he could be loved for who he is." Hannah set her phone down and stared at her ceiling. She thought about Marcus apologizing in the coffee shop, about how his words had rung hollow because they'd been about his guilt rather than her healing. Then she thought about Evan at 2 a.m., devastated not because she'd discovered his wealth, but because he'd hurt her by withholding it. The difference mattered. She texted Evan, "Can we talk? Your place tonight after Noah's asleep?" The response was immediate. "Yes. Thank you. I'll be here." The day crawled past. Hannah tried to work but ended up staring at her designs without seeing them. Kelly brought her lunch and sat with her in supportive silence. By the time evening arrived, Hannah had rehearsed 17 different versions of the conversation she needed to have. She arrived at Evan's house at 8 p.m. with her heart in her throat. He opened the door looking like he hadn't slept, wearing sweatpants and an old t-shirt, his face lighting up with cautious hope when he saw her. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi." They stood there for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. Then Evan stepped back to let her in. Noah was in his pajamas, clutching Spike and Chompy, his eyes worried in a way that made Hannah's chest ache. "Are you mad at Daddy?" he asked immediately. "He's been really sad. He pretended he wasn't, but I could tell." Hannah crouched to Noah's level. "I'm not mad. We just had a grown-up conversation that's complicated, but we're going to talk about it and work it out, okay?" "Pumas?" His voice was so small, so reminiscent of the fear that she'd leave like his mother had. "Promise." Hannah pulled him into a hug. "Now go brush your teeth and let your dad read you a story. I'll be here when you're done." Noah hugged her tight, then scampered off. Evan watched the exchange with raw emotion on his face. "Thank you," he said quietly, for reassuring him. "I meant it. I'm not leaving." Hannah met his eyes. "But we need to talk about trust and honesty and why hiding things to protect yourself ends up hurting people anyway." They waited while Evan handled bedtime, the familiar sounds of their routine drifting through the walls. When Evan finally emerged, he found Hannah in the living room, curled into the corner of the couch, where she always sat. He took the opposite end, giving her space. "I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted that you'd see past the money to who I actually am." "Why didn't you?" Hannah's voice was steady, curious rather than accusatory. "I need to understand, Evan, not because I'm trying to punish you, but because if we're building something real, I need to know why you chose to hide this." Evan was quiet for a long moment, his hands clasped between his knees. "My ex-wife married me when I was just starting the company. We were living in a one-bedroom apartment, eating ramen, working 80-hour weeks trying to make the business viable. She said she loved the ambition, the potential, the vision of what we'd build together." His voice went flat. Then the company took off, faster than anyone expected. Within 3 years, we had venture capital, major clients, media attention. She loved it. The money, the status, the lifestyle. She started planning our future around wealth, around what we could afford, who we'd impress. Hannah stayed quiet, letting him find his words. I didn't recognize her anymore. Every conversation was about bigger houses, better cars, the right social circles. When I told her I wanted to keep the company mission-focused instead of profit-focused, that I wouldn't take it public or maximize shareholder value at the expense of accessibility, she looked at me like I'd betrayed her. Evan's jaw tightened. Then she got pregnant. I thought maybe it would shift her perspective. Instead, she started talking about boarding schools and trust funds and setting our son up for success. And I realized she didn't love me. She loved what I represented financially. When did she leave? Hannah asked softly. Noah was 6 months old. I came home from a conference and found a note. She said she'd made a mistake, that I wasn't the man she'd married, that I'd chosen principles over providing her the life she deserved. She signed away custody, took a settlement, and disappeared. Evan's voice cracked. She walked away from our infant son because I wouldn't maximize my net worth. Hannah felt tears on her face. Evan, after that I changed everything. Moved to this modest house, kept driving my old car, started living well below my means, because I needed to know that people who came into Noah's life, into our life, were there for us, not for what we had. The money became this test I didn't know how to stop administering. And I failed the test by being upset you hit it? No. Evan finally looked at her fully. You failed the test by not caring about it in the first place. By seeing me as just Evan, some consultant with a kid and a coffee stain and a willingness to hold you while you broke. You passed, Hannah, and that terrified me because it meant if I told you about the money, it might change how you saw me. Might make you wonder if I was worth it for the wrong reasons. Hannah understood then, not just intellectually, but in her bones. Like I was terrified that if you really understood my diagnosis, really grasped that I couldn't give you biological children, you'd realize I wasn't worth the complexity. Exactly. Evan's voice was raw. We were both hiding, both protecting ourselves, both so convinced we were insufficient that we couldn't trust someone seeing our whole truth and staying. The parallel was devastating and perfect. Hannah uncurled from her corner and moved to sit beside him, close enough to feel his warmth. Your mother texted me, she said. Gave me context I needed. But Evan, here's what I need you to understand. The money doesn't change how I see you. You could be worth $5 or $500 million, and you'd still be the man who feeds ducks with his son every Sunday, who cuts toast wrong, who held me in the rain at a wedding when I was falling apart. That's who you are, not the Forbes profile. Then why did it hurt so much when you found out? His voice was quiet, genuinely asking. Because I thought we were being completely honest with each other. Because I've been vulnerable with you about my deepest wounds. And finding out you were still protecting yourself felt like maybe you didn't trust me the same way. Hannah took his hand. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just asking for what I should have asked for from the beginning. Complete honesty. All of it. The money, the company, the fears, the damage. I want all of you, Evan, not just the parts you think are safe to show. Evan pulled her against him, his face buried in her hair. I want that too. All of you. The grief and the resilience and the fear and the strength. Everything Marcus couldn't see and Margaret tried to weaponize. I want every piece. They held each other on the couch where they'd watched dinosaur movies and eaten ice cream and built a relationship one honest moment at a time. Hannah felt the last of her hurt dissolve into understanding. Tell me about the company, she said. Really, not the Forbes version. Your version. So Evan told her. About building software for his son when traditional education failed him. About hiring teachers with learning differences to consult on design. About turning down buyout offers worth hundreds of millions because going public would mean prioritizing profit over mission. About the nights he still worked late testing new features. About the students whose lives changed because someone finally built tools that worked for their brains. Hannah listened and heard his passion, his purpose, his bone-deep commitment to making the world better for kids like Noah. This was the man she'd fallen in love with, not despite the money, but including it as one facet of someone complex and whole. I'm proud of you, she said when he finished, for building something that matters, for choosing mission over profit, for being exactly who you are. Even though I hid it? Even though you hid it, because I understand why. Hannah shifted to face him. But no more hiding. From here forward, we're honest about everything. Our fears, our damage, our bank accounts, our diagnoses, all of it. Deal? Deal. Evan kissed her softly. Thank you for coming back. For listening. For not letting money be the thing that breaks us. Money's never the thing that breaks people. Fear is. Hannah smiled against his mouth. And I'm done letting fear make my decisions. They spent the next hour talking through logistics they'd been avoiding, what it meant to be part of Noah's life long term, whether Hannah was comfortable with the visibility that came with dating someone whose company was increasingly in the public eye, how to navigate the wealth difference without letting it create power imbalances. I want to contribute, Hannah said, to dinners, to activities with Noah, to our life together. I need to feel like an equal partner, not someone being taken care of. You are an equal partner, Evan's voice was firm. But I hear you. We figure out what works for us, not what worked for anyone else. Around midnight, Hannah realized she should go home, but found herself reluctant to leave the warmth of Evan's couch, the safety of his presence. Stay, he said quietly, reading her hesitation. Guest room. No pressure. Just stay. So Hannah stayed, borrowed one of Evan's t-shirts and brushed her teeth with a spare toothbrush he produced from a bathroom cabinet. Climbed into the guest bed that smelled like lavender detergent and listened to the house settle around her. She woke at 3 a.m. to small footsteps and a whispered voice. Hannah? Are you Elihu? Noah stood in the doorway, backlit by the hall nightlight, clutching Chompy. I'm really here, sweetheart. Did you have a bad dream? No, I just wanted to make Sue you didn't leave. He patted closer. Can I stay with you, just for a little? Hannah pulled back the covers. Noah climbed in, tiny and warm and trusting, curling against her side like he belonged there. I don't like when people leave, he whispered. It makes my tummy hoot. I know. Hannah smoothed his curls. But I'm not leaving. I'm staying right here. Forever? The question was too big for 3 a.m., too weighted with hope and fear. But Hannah found herself answering anyway. I'm planning on it. Noah relaxed against her, his breathing evening out into sleep within minutes. Hannah lay there with a 5-year-old pressed against her side and felt something fundamental shift in her chest. This was what she'd thought she'd lost. Not pregnancy or biology or conventional motherhood, but this, connection, trust, a child choosing her as safe. She was still awake when Evan appeared in the doorway an hour later, checking on them both. His expression when he saw Noah curled against Hannah was tender enough to break hearts. You okay? Evan whispered. Just needed reassurance I was still here. Hannah kept her voice low. Is this okay? Him sleeping here? More than okay. Evan moved to the other side of the bed, careful not to wake Noah. Is this okay? Me staying? Hannah nodded, and they lay there in the dark with Noah between them, a family that looked nothing like the traditional model, but felt more real than anything Hannah had known. Morning came too early, announced by Noah waking and demanding pancakes. They stumbled to the kitchen, still in sleep clothes, and Evan made breakfast while Noah narrated his dreams and Hannah set the table. It was so ordinary, so domestic, so exactly what Hannah had thought she'd never have. I have to tell you something, Evan said over pancakes, and I need you to be honest about how you feel. Hannah's stomach dropped. Okay. My company's hosting a gala next month. Education innovators, donors, press. I usually skip them or go alone because I hate the performance of it all. He took a breath. But if we're doing this, really doing this, I'd like you there. As my partner, not hidden, not secret. With full knowledge that people will take photos and ask questions and probably Google you within minutes. The prospect was terrifying. Hannah imagined Margaret Porter seeing photos, Marcus recognizing her name, the inevitable speculation about the woman dating Evan Cole. But she also imagined standing beside him publicly, claiming their relationship instead of hiding it. I'll go, she said, on one condition. Anything. You let me design something for the gala. Visuals, branding, whatever you need. As a partner, not a charity case. Let me contribute my skills the way you contribute yours. Evan's smile was slow and genuine. You've got a deal. Noah looked between them, syrup on his chin. Does this mean Hannah's going to a fancy party with you, Daddy? It does. Can I come? Not to this one, buddy, but we'll have our own party, just us three. With cake? Obviously with cake. Noah considered this acceptable and returned to his pancakes. Hannah caught Evan's eye across the table and felt hope unfurl in her chest. They were building something real, something that included galas and pancakes, wealth and honesty, a little boy who needed them both. Later that afternoon, after Hannah had gone home to shower and change, her phone rang. An unknown Seattle number. Hannah Pierce? The voice was unfamiliar, professional. This is Rebecca Martinez from Cascade Children's Hospital. I'm calling about your inquiry from 6 months ago regarding egg donation recipients. Hannah's heart stopped. 6 months ago, in the depths of grief after her diagnosis, she'd submitted her information to a database hoping that even if she couldn't carry children, maybe her eggs could help someone else. She'd forgotten about it entirely. Yes? Her voice came out strangled. We have a match. A couple who's been trying for years. They saw your profile and felt a strong connection to your story. They'd like to meet you if you're still interested in moving forward with donation. The world tilted. Hannah sat down hard on her couch, trying to process. 6 months ago, this would have felt like salvation, proof she could still contribute to creating life even if she couldn't carry it. Now, with Evan and Noah reshaping her understanding of family, she didn't know what it meant. Can I think about it? She managed. Of course. Take all the time you need. Just know that this couple is hoping, and your generosity could change their entire world. After they hung up, Hannah stared at her phone for 20 minutes. Then she called the one person who would understand all the complicated layers of this. Evan, something happened. Can we talk? Evan arrived at Hannah's apartment within 30 minutes. Noah in tow because his parents were out of town and babysitters required advance notice. The little boy immediately claimed the couch and began arranging the throw pillows into what he announced was a fort for dinosaurs who need privacy. Hannah told Evan about the call while Noah constructed his elaborate pillow architecture. She watched his face carefully, looking for judgment or concern or some sign that this complicated things between them. Instead, she saw only thoughtful attention. How do you feel about it? He asked when she finished. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately. It felt like the only way I could contribute to creating life, the only way to prove my body wasn't completely useless. Hannah twisted her hands in her lap. But now I don't know. Everything's different. I'm different. Different how? I don't feel broken anymore. The words came out quiet but certain. Being with you and Noah, I've learned that family isn't about biology, that motherhood isn't defined by pregnancy, that I can matter to a child without sharing DNA. She looked at Noah, who was now narrating an elaborate story about his pillow fort. So I don't know if I still need this. If donating eggs is about helping someone else, or proving something to myself that I don't need to prove anymore. Evan was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you what I think? Please. I think 6 months ago you were making decisions from a place of grief, trying to find meaning in loss. And that's not wrong. Grief makes us do things that feel like survival. He took her hand. But you're not in that place anymore. So the question isn't whether you should donate because you felt like you had to back then. It's whether you want to donate now, from this place of wholeness, as an act of genuine generosity. The distinction clarified something Hannah hadn't been able to articulate. I need to meet them, the couple, before I decide. Then meet them. What if it's too hard? What if I see them and feel everything I thought I'd moved past? Then you'll feel it, and I'll be here. And Noah will probably say something wildly inappropriate that makes you laugh despite everything. Evan smiled. You don't have to have it all figured out, Hannah. You just have to be honest about what you need. Noah looked up from his fort. Are we talking about something serious? You both have your serious faces. A little bit serious, Hannah admitted. I'm trying to make a decision about something important. Noah abandoned his pillows and climbed onto the couch between them, his small face scrunched in concentration. Daddy says when he has to make big decisions, he makes a list. Good things on one side, hard things on the other side. Then he looks at which side is bigger. That's very wise, Hannah said, fighting back tears at his earnestness. I know, I'm very smart. Noah patted her hand. But also, Daddy says sometimes you just know in your tummy what's white. Like how I know Triceratops is cooler than Stegosaurus, even though you like Stegosaurus best. Hey, Hannah protested. Stegosaurus is objectively superior. See? You just know. In your tummy. Noah looked satisfied with this logic. Can we have snacks now? Decision-making makes me hungry. They raided Hannah's kitchen, which was considerably less child-friendly than Evan's, but contained enough crackers and cheese to satisfy Noah's requirements. While he ate, Hannah called the hospital back and arranged to meet the couple the following week. The days leading up to the meeting passed in a blur of normal life punctuated by anxiety. Hannah worked on designs for Evan's gala, creating visuals that emphasized accessibility and innovation without being corporate or cold. She attended a parent-teacher conference with Evan for Noah's preschool, sitting beside him while the teacher praised Noah's creativity and gently suggested he might benefit from some speech therapy for his R's. He'll grow out of it on his own timeline, Evan had said firmly but kindly. We're not in a rush to fix things that aren't broken. Hannah had watched him advocate for his son with quiet fierceness and fallen a little more in love. She also, in a moment of courage or insanity, called her mother. They hadn't spoken in months, not since Hannah had told her about the diagnosis and her mother had responded with awkward platitudes about adoption and God's plan. But sitting in her apartment the night before meeting the couple, Hannah found herself needing her mother's voice. Hannah? Her mother sounded surprised. Sweetheart, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I know. I'm sorry I've been distant. Hannah took a breath. I need to tell you some things, and I need you to just listen without trying to fix it or find the silver lining. Can you do that? Her mother was quiet for a moment. I can try. So Hannah told her about Marcus's wedding and Margaret's cruelty, about meeting Evan through desperation and finding love through honesty, about Noah and their Sundays and the way a 5-year-old had taught her that family was about showing up, about the egg donation offer and her confusion about what it meant. I spent so long thinking my diagnosis made me less than, Hannah said, her voice thick with emotion. And you didn't help, Mom. When I told you, you immediately jumped to solutions instead of just sitting with my grief. You made it about fixing the problem instead of acknowledging the loss. I know, her mother's voice cracked. I know I did, and I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to handle your pain. I wanted to make it better, and instead I made you feel like your feelings weren't valid. I needed you to just be sad with me. You're right, you did. And I failed you. Her mother took a shaky breath. But Hannah, listening to you now, hearing about this man and his son and the life you're building, sweetheart, you sound happy, really happy. Not the performing kind, the real kind. I am. Hannah wiped her eyes. I'm terrified and happy and building something I never expected. And tomorrow I'm meeting a couple who want my eggs, and I don't know if I should do it because 6 months ago I needed to prove I could still create life. But now I'm learning I can create family without biology, and maybe that's enough. Oh, honey, her mother's voice was warm. Only you can make this decision, but let me ask you something. If you donate your eggs, are you doing it because you think you owe it to someone, or because you genuinely want to help a couple who's suffering the way you suffered? The question cut through Hannah's confusion with surgical precision. I don't know. Then figure that out before you decide. And Hannah, whether you donate or not, whether you have biological children or not, whether you marry this Evan or not, you're not less than. You've never been less than. You're my daughter and I love you exactly as you are. Hannah cried then, ugly sobs that she'd been holding back for months. Her mother stayed on the line, not trying to fix or soothe, just present. When Hannah finally calmed down, they talked for another hour about small things. Her mother's garden, Hannah's work, Noah's dinosaur obsession. I'd like to meet them, her mother said before they hung up. This Evan and Noah, when you're ready. I'd like that too. The next evening, Hannah sat in a quiet conference room at Cascade Children's Hospital across from Sarah and David Chen, a couple in their late 30s who looked at her like she held the answer to every prayer they'd whispered in the dark. "Thank you for meeting us," Sarah said, her hands clasped tightly on the table. "We know this must be strange for you." "It's strange for all of us," Hannah said gently. "Tell me about yourselves. Why you want this." They told her their story, 7 years of trying to conceive naturally. 3 rounds of IVF that had depleted their savings and hope. Sarah's own diagnosis of premature ovarian failure, discovered after years of unexplained infertility. The grief of letting go of biological children. The desperate hope that egg donation might give them a chance. Hannah listened and heard her own story reflected back. The devastation of diagnosis, the feeling of being broken, the slow realization that wanting children and being able to carry them were 2 different things. "Why my eggs?" Hannah asked. "There are other donors, younger ones. Why me?" Sarah and David exchanged a glance. "We read your profile," Sarah said quietly, "about your diagnosis, about how you wanted to help someone else have what you couldn't, about your work in design and your love of creating beautiful things." Her voice broke. "We felt like you understood, like you knew what this kind of loss feels like. And we thought, maybe hoped, that someone who'd been through this would create life that knew how precious it was. How wanted." The words landed like a benediction. Hannah felt tears streaming down her face. "I need to be honest with you," she said. "When I submitted my information 6 months ago, I was in a different place. I was grieving and desperate to prove my body wasn't completely useless. I thought donating eggs would give my diagnosis meaning." "And now?" David asked. "Now I'm building a life with a man who has a 5-year-old son. I'm learning that family isn't about biology, that I can be a mother figure without pregnancy, that my worth isn't tied to my reproductive capacity." Hannah took a shaky breath. "So I don't know if I should donate because I need to or because you need me to, and those are very different motivations." Sarah was crying now too. "Can I tell you something? We've talked to 3 other donors. All of them were doing it for money or because they had extra eggs after their own IVF. Nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their reasons. But you're the first person who seemed to understand what this loss feels like, and that matters to us. A lot." "If I do this," Hannah said slowly, "I need you to understand something. These would be your children, not mine. I don't want updates or photos or involvement, not because I don't care, but because I need clear boundaries for my own healing. I can help you have a family, but I can't be part of that family. Can you accept that?" "Yes." Sarah's voice was firm. "We're not looking for a co-parent. We're looking for a gift from someone who understands what this means. And if you can give us that gift, we'll spend the rest of our lives being grateful." The meeting lasted 2 hours. They talked through logistics, medical procedures, legal protections. The hospital coordinator explained the process: hormone treatments, egg retrieval, compensation that Hannah immediately said she didn't want. "Donate it to your foundation or use it for someone else's treatment," Hannah said. "I'm not doing this for money." When she finally left the hospital, emotionally wrung out and uncertain, she found Evan waiting in the parking lot. He'd somehow known she'd need him, had arranged for his parents to watch Noah, had showed up without being asked. "How'd it go?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "They're good people. People who deserve this." Hannah pressed her face against his chest. "People who understand what loss feels like." "Does that mean you're doing it?" "I think so. Not because I need to prove anything, but because I can help them and it costs me nothing but time and discomfort." She looked up at him. "Is that okay? Does it change things between us?" "Why would it change things?" "Because I'm literally giving away genetic material that could create children. Children that won't be yours or mine or ours." Evan was quiet for a moment. "Hannah, you donating eggs doesn't threaten what we're building. It's an act of generosity to people who need hope. That's beautiful. That's you seeing someone else's pain and choosing to help even though you've been through your own version of that pain. How could that be anything but admirable?" Hannah kissed him there in the parking lot, not caring who saw, overwhelmed by the reality of being loved by someone who saw her complexity and didn't need to simplify it. The next month unfolded with calculated chaos. Hannah began the hormone treatments for egg donation, which made her emotional and exhausted and occasionally irrational. Evan responded by showing up with ice cream and patience, letting her cry or rage or laugh without trying to fix her feelings. Noah, with the uncanny perception of children, brought her his stuffed animals because they make everything better. She also threw herself into preparing for the gala. The designs she created were bold and beautiful, emphasizing the human stories behind educational innovation. She worked with Evan's team to create displays that showcased students whose lives had changed because someone had built tools that met them where they were. Kelly helped her find a dress for the gala, midnight blue silk that echoed the dress she'd worn to Marcus's wedding but transformed. This time, she wasn't armor. This time, she was art. The night of the gala arrived with unseasonable warmth, and Hannah's nerves stretched taut. She stood in Evan's bedroom while he wrestled with his bow tie, watching him in the mirror. "I hate these things," he muttered. "The performance, the small talk, the inevitable questions about why I'm not remarrying or giving Noah siblings or taking the company public." "Want me to answer those questions for you?" Hannah came up behind him, fixed his bow tie with practiced efficiency. "You're not remarrying because you're building something real with me. Noah doesn't need siblings because he has a family that chooses him. And you're not taking the company public because profit isn't your mission." Evan turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made Hannah's breath catch. "Have I told you lately that you're extraordinary?" "Not in the past 3 hours. I was starting to worry." He kissed her carefully, mindful of her lipstick, and Hannah felt grounded. Ready. Whatever happened tonight, they'd face it together. The gala was held at a restored art museum, all soaring ceilings and carefully curated elegance. Hannah walked in on Evan's arm and immediately understood why he hated these events. Everyone was performing wealth, success, philanthropy as social currency. But scattered throughout were genuine moments. Educators talking passionately about their students. Parents sharing stories of children who'd finally found tools that worked for their learning differences. Kids who'd been invited to demonstrate the software, their faces lit with pride. Hannah's designs were everywhere, projected on walls, printed on programs, woven through the space as visual storytelling. People kept stopping Evan to compliment the aesthetic, and he kept directing them to Hannah with unmistakable pride. "She's the artist. I just write checks." Midway through the evening, a reporter from a local education magazine approached them. "Mr. Cole, can I get a quote about tonight's event? And introduce me to your companion?" Evan's hand tightened on Hannah's waist. "This is Hannah Pierce, my partner. She's the designer behind tonight's visuals, and the reason this gala doesn't look like every other corporate fundraiser." The reporter's eyes lit up. "Partner as in business or personal?" "Both," Hannah said before Evan could deflect. "I'm doing design work for the company, and I'm dating Evan. Is there a particular angle you're after?" The reporter blinked, clearly not expecting directness. It's rare to see Mr. Cole at these events with anyone. There's been speculation about his personal life." "Well, now you can stop speculating," Evan said mildly. "I'm very happily not single. Can we talk about the scholarship program instead?" They navigated the rest of the evening with practiced teamwork, Evan handling donors and board members, Hannah charming educators and parents, both of them retreating to quiet corners when the performance became too much. Around 10 p.m., Hannah's phone buzzed. A photo from Evan's mother, Noah asleep on their couch, still in his play clothes, clutching both Spike and Chompy, with a sign propped beside him that read, "Waiting for Hannah and Daddy." She showed Evan and watched his expression soften. "We should go. The gala isn't over." "I don't care. Our kid is waiting." The casual use of "our" made Hannah's chest tight. They made their excuses, slipped out into the night, and drove to Evan's parents' house. Noah was indeed asleep and transferred to Evan's car without waking. Evan's mother pulled Hannah aside while Evan buckled Noah into his car seat. "He told us," Patricia said quietly, "about the egg donation, about what you're doing for that couple." Hannah tensed. And I think it's one of the kindest things I've heard of anyone doing, using your own grief to help someone else find hope. Patricia squeezed Hannah's hand. "You're good for my son, good for Noah, Good for our family. I hope you know that. I'm trying to believe it. Keep trying. We're not letting you go. The drive home, and Hannah realized with a start that she'd started thinking of Evan's house as home, was quiet. Noah dozed in the back seat while Evan drove with one hand and held Hannah's with the other. Thank you, he said, for tonight, for being exactly who you are in a room full of people performing who they think they should be. Thank you for claiming me publicly, for not hiding this. I'll never hide you. Evan's voice was fierce. You're the best thing that's happened to me since Noah. Why would I hide that? At the house, they carried Noah inside, and Hannah helped Evan navigate the complicated process of getting a sleeping 5-year-old into pajamas without fully waking him. They'd done this dance enough times now that it felt choreographed, Evan handling pants while Hannah managed the shirt, both of them moving in silent coordination. When Noah was finally settled, they collapsed on the couch, still in their gala clothes, exhausted and content. I have something for you, Evan said. I was going to wait, but I don't want to wait anymore. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket, and Hannah's heart stopped. Before you panic, Evan said quickly, this isn't what you think. Or maybe it is. I honestly don't know what you're thinking right now. Evan, let me finish. He opened the box to reveal a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant, a stegosaurus rendered in careful detail. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. We've only known each other 2 months, and that feels fast even though it also feels like I've known you forever. But Hannah, I am asking you to stay. Officially. Move in with us. Make this your home. Not because you have to or because it's convenient, but because we want you here. Noah and me. We want you in our mornings and our evenings and our Sundays and every ordinary moment in between. Hannah couldn't speak around the lump in her throat. She touched the stegosaurus pendant with trembling fingers. Noah helped me pick it out, Evan continued. He said stegosaurus was your favorite, and that meant it was perfect. He also said I should give it to you with a speech about feelings, but 5-year-olds are not great speechwriters, so I'm improvising. He took a breath. I love you, Hannah. I love your strength and your vulnerability and the way you show up scared but do it anyway. I love watching you with Noah, seeing how gentle you are with his fears because you understand them. I love that you're choosing to help a couple have a family, even though it costs you emotional energy. I love who you are and who we're becoming together. So please, stay with us. Make this official. Yes. The word came out choked with tears. Yes, I'll stay. I'll move in. I'll build this life with you. Evan fastened the necklace around her throat, his hands gentle. The stegosaurus rested just above her heart, a reminder that beauty could come from being exactly who you were. They kissed there on the couch, still in their gala clothes, and Hannah felt every broken piece inside her clicking into a new configuration. Not fixed, she'd never be unbroken, but whole in a different way. Complete not because someone had filled her gaps, but because she'd learned gaps were just spaces where light could get in. The egg retrieval happened 2 weeks later. Evan held Hannah's hand through the procedure, waited while she recovered, brought her home to a house where Noah had created an elaborate Get Well Soon card featuring dinosaurs performing medical procedures. They heroes, Noah explained seriously, because Doctow's all heroes and dinosaurs all cool, so Doctow dinosaurs are superheroes. Hannah laughed until she cried, high on anesthesia and emotion and the surreal reality of her life. A month after that, Sarah and David Chen sent a single letter through the hospital coordinator. The transfer worked. We're pregnant. We don't have words for what you've given us except thank you. You'll never know these children, but they'll grow up knowing that someone who understood loss chose to create hope. That matters. Thank you for our miracle. Hannah read the letter in Evan's arms and felt a complicated tangle of emotions, joy for them, grief for herself, peace with her choices. Evan just held her, not trying to explain or fix, just present. You did a beautiful thing, he said quietly. I did a complicated thing that happened to be beautiful, Hannah corrected. I'm allowed to feel both. You are. You're allowed to feel everything. She moved in the following weekend with remarkably little fanfare. Most of her important things had already migrated to Evan's house over the past months. Her favorite mug, half her wardrobe, the illustrations she'd been working on. Kelly helped her pack up the apartment she'd lived in through her diagnosis and heartbreak, the space that had witnessed her falling apart and beginning to rebuild. "You're sure about this?" Kelly asked, taping up a box of books. "Moving in with a guy and his kid after 2.5 months?" "I'm terrified," Hannah admitted. "But I'm sure. This is different than Marcus. This is choosing people who see all of me and stay anyway." "Then I'm happy for you." Kelly pulled her into a hug. "You deserve this. The whole complicated, beautiful mess of it." Noah helped unpack with enthusiastic inefficiency, insisting that Hannah's clothes needed to go in the special drawer Daddy cleaned out, and that her toothbrush goes right next to ours because we a family now. That night, after Noah was asleep and boxes were scattered across every surface, Evan found Hannah standing in what was now their bedroom, looking overwhelmed. "Second thoughts?" he asked gently. "Terror thoughts. What if I'm not good at this? Living with you, parenting Noah, being part of a family. Then you'll be bad at it sometimes, and we'll figure it out together." Evan pulled her close. "Hannah, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up." "I can do that." "I know you can. You've been showing up since the moment you walked into that coffee shop and asked a stranger to pretend to love you." He kissed her forehead. "Turns out, I didn't have to pretend for very long." 3 months later, Hannah stood in Common Grounds Coffee, the same shop where this had all started, waiting for someone she'd never expected to see again. Margaret Porter sat at a corner table, looking simultaneously imperious and uncertain. Hannah had debated for weeks whether to respond to Margaret's email requesting a meeting. Evan had left the decision entirely up to her, offering only that whatever she chose, he'd support it. In the end, curiosity had won. "Hannah!" Margaret stood as she approached, and for the first time Hannah saw her without the armor of confidence. She looked older, tired. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either." Hannah sat, ordered coffee she didn't want, and waited. Margaret twisted her napkin, uncharacteristically nervous. "I owe you an apology. Several, actually, for how I treated you during your relationship with Marcus, for the wedding invitation, for every cruel comment disguised as concern." She took a breath. "I was wrong about you, about what makes someone worthy of my son, about what family means." "What changed your mind?" Hannah kept her voice neutral. "Vanessa left him." Margaret's composure cracked slightly. 6 weeks after the wedding, she said marriage wasn't what she expected, that Marcus was too controlled by family expectations, that she wanted a partner, not a dynasty heir. She laughed without humor. "She's keeping the baby but not the marriage. Said she'd rather be a single mother than suffocate under our legacy requirements." Hannah absorbed this, feeling complicated sympathy for a woman she'd never liked. "I'm sorry Marcus is going through that. He's devastated, and Margaret paused, seeming to choose words carefully. "I'm realizing that I prioritized the wrong things. I pushed him towards someone who looked perfect on paper without considering whether she'd love him for who he was. And I destroyed his relationship with someone who actually did love him." "I loved who I thought he was," Hannah corrected. "But, Margaret, you didn't destroy our relationship. Marcus did by choosing your approval over my feelings. That's on him." "You're right, but I made the choice easy for him." Margaret met her eyes. "I saw photos from the gala. You and Evan Cole. I did some research." "Of course you did." "He's quite successful, wealthy. Everything I thought mattered." Margaret's voice went soft. "But that's not why you're with him, is it?" "No. I'm with him because he sees my damage and doesn't run, because his 5-year-old son taught me that family is about showing up, not biology, because he makes me believe I'm exactly enough." Hannah leaned forward. "All the things you told me I wasn't, worthy of legacy, capable of motherhood, good enough for your family. He's taught me were lies, not through words, but through choosing me every single day." Margaret absorbed this, and something shifted in her expression. "I was cruel to you, inexcusably cruel. And I'm sorry. I appreciate that." Hannah meant it. "But Margaret, I need you to understand something. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need your apology to move forward. I'm building a life that has nothing to do with you or Marcus or your legacy. I'm here because you asked, but I'm whole, whether you acknowledge your mistakes or not. You're different, Margaret said quietly. Stronger. I'm the same person I always was. I just stopped believing your assessment of my worth. Hannah stood, gathering her bag. I hope Marcus finds happiness. I hope you learn that legacy means less than love. But Margaret, I'm done carrying your judgment. I'm done letting your voice in my head tell me I'm insufficient. I'm exactly enough, and I don't need your permission to believe that. She walked out of the coffee shop into autumn sunshine, feeling lighter than she had in years. Her phone buzzed immediately, a text from Evan. How'd it go? Noah and I are at the park planning your birthday surprise. He insists it involves dinosaurs and cake. I have no control over this situation. Hannah smiled and texted back. It went exactly how it needed to. Be home soon. Tell Noah I love dinosaurs and cake equally. He says that's the right answer. Also, he wants to know if we can get a real stegosaurus for your birthday. I told him probably not. He's negotiating. Hannah found them at Discovery Park, Noah covered in mud and holding what appeared to be 17 dandelions, Evan looking simultaneously exhausted and delighted. Hannah! Noah launched himself at her, transferring mud generously. We found the best dandelions. They we for your birthday, even though it's not for 3 more days. Also, can we get a wheel stegosaurus? Daddy says no, but I think he's wrong. I think real stegosauruses are extinct, sweetheart. That's what Daddy said. But what if they were just hiding? Then they deserve their privacy. Hannah accepted the dandelions, perfect in their imperfection. Thank you for these. They're beautiful. They walked the park trails while Noah provided detailed theories about where dinosaurs might be hiding if they weren't actually extinct. Evan held Hannah's hand and listened to her recount the conversation with Margaret with quiet attention. How do you feel? He asked when she finished. Free. Hannah squeezed his hand. Like I finally closed a door I should have shut months ago. Margaret can think whatever she wants about me. It doesn't matter anymore. It never should have mattered. But it did, until I learned better. Hannah stopped walking, turned to face him fully. Thank you for teaching me better, for showing me what it looks like when someone sees all of you and chooses to stay. Noah had run ahead to examine something he'd spotted in the grass. Evan pulled Hannah close, kissed her with the kind of tenderness that still made her breath catch. I'll keep choosing you, he promised, every single day. That's not negotiable. Hannah's birthday arrived 3 days later with typical Noah fanfare. She woke to him jumping on the bed at 6 a.m., singing happy birthday at volumes that should be illegal before coffee. It's your special day, he announced. We have plans. The plans turned out to involve breakfast in bed, made by Noah with Evan's supervision, featuring toast cut into approximately triangular shapes and eggs that were enthusiastic if not technically edible. Then a trip to the Natural History Museum, where Noah narrated every dinosaur exhibit with passionate intensity. Then dinner at Hannah's favorite Thai restaurant, where Noah attempted to use chopsticks and ended up with noodles in his hair. Back at home, Evan produced a cake, professionally made this time, decorated with intricate stegosaurus designs that made Noah gasp with delight. Make a wish, Noah demanded when the candles were lit. Hannah closed her eyes and thought about what she would have wished for a year ago. A cure for her diagnosis, Marcus's love, Margaret's approval, proof that she was enough. Now, surrounded by the family she'd chosen and who'd chosen her back, Hannah realized she didn't need to wish for anything. She had everything that mattered. She blew out the candles anyway, and Noah cheered like she'd accomplished something extraordinary. Later, after Noah was asleep and they'd cleaned up the wreckage of celebration, Evan handed her a small wrapped package. One more gift, he said, from both of us. Inside was a leather-bound journal, the cover embossed with a single stegosaurus. The first page held a note in Evan's handwriting. For all the stories you haven't told yet, for documenting this beautiful, complicated life we're building, for remembering that you are always enough. Below it, in careful, wobbly letters, Noah had written, I love you, Hannah. You're the best. Efwam Noah. Hannah pressed the journal to her chest and cried the good kind of tears, the kind that came from being so thoroughly loved that it physically hurt. There's one more thing, Evan said quietly. He pulled a second small box from his pocket, and this time Hannah knew exactly what it was. Evan, I know we said we wouldn't rush this. I know 2.5 months is fast by any reasonable timeline. He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with a small diamond. But Hannah, I've never been more sure of anything. You're my partner, my love, Noah's chosen mother, the person I want to build every tomorrow with. So I'm asking, even though it's fast, even though we're still figuring things out, even though life is complicated, will you marry me? Hannah looked at the ring, at Evan's hopeful face, at the life they'd built from desperation and honesty and the courage to keep showing up. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. I'll marry both of you. I'll choose this complicated, beautiful family for as long as you'll have me. Evan slipped the ring onto her finger with trembling hands. That's forever then, because we're not letting you go. They sat on the couch in the house that was now home, and Hannah thought about the journey from that gray Saturday morning in a coffee shop to this moment, about asking a stranger to pretend to love her and finding someone who loved her truly, about surviving a wedding designed to humiliate her and building a family that celebrated her, about believing she was broken and learning she was exactly enough. The next morning, Noah woke early and found them asleep on the couch, Hannah's hand displaying the new ring. He studied it with serious concentration, then ran to his room and returned with Spike the Stegosaurus. Is Hannah staying forever now? He asked Evan, his voice small. She is, buddy. We're getting married. That means she's official family. Noah's whole face lit up. Like, we all a family, not just pretend. We were always a real family, Hannah said gently. But yes, now it's official. Noah climbed between them, carefully arranging Spike so the stuffed dinosaur could see everyone. Spike says this is the best news EW. Also, he says we should celeb-wat with pancakes. Spike is very wise, Evan agreed. They made pancakes together in their pajamas, Noah narrating the process with scientific precision, Evan burning the first batch, Hannah rescuing the second. And as she stood in the kitchen with batter on her shirt and a 5-year-old demanding more chocolate chips and a man who loved her without conditions, Hannah realized she'd found what Margaret Porter never understood. Legacy wasn't about bloodlines or genetic continuity. It was about love that chose to stay, about showing up for people who needed you, about believing that brokenness and wholeness could exist in the same person, in the same family, in the same beautiful, complicated life. 3 months later, they married in Discovery Park on a Sunday morning, because Sundays were for family and the park was where they'd learned to be one. Noah was the ring bearer, carrying the bands in a box decorated with hand-drawn dinosaurs. Kelly stood as Hannah's maid of honor, Evan's parents beamed from the front row, and a small group of loved ones gathered to witness them promising to choose each other every single day. Hannah wore a simple white dress and the Stegosaurus necklace Evan had given her. Evan wore a suit Noah had approved as fancy enough but not too fancy. And when they exchanged vows, Hannah promised to show up scared, to love Noah as fiercely as Evan did, to build a family based on presence rather than biology. Evan promised to see all of her, the damage and the strength and everything in between, and never ask her to be anything other than exactly who she was. Noah, when asked if he had anything to add, said very seriously, I promise to share my dinosaurs and my dad and my womb when we make it bigger for Hannah's stuff. And also I think we should have cake now because weddings need cake. The small gathering laughed, and they cut a cake decorated with, of course, a Stegosaurus and a Triceratops holding hands. Later, after the celebration wound down and Noah fell asleep in the car on the way home, Evan carried him inside while Hannah followed with leftover cake and a heart so full it felt impossible. They tucked Noah into bed, both of them moving through the familiar routine that had become theirs. When they finally collapsed into their own bed, wedding clothes discarded, makeup smeared, exhausted and perfectly happy, Evan pulled Hannah close. We did it, he said. We built something real from a fake relationship. We built something real from honesty, Hannah corrected. From being brave enough to show up broken and trust someone to stay anyway. I'll always stay. I know. That's why I said yes. They fell asleep tangled together, and Hannah dreamed of Sunday mornings and dandelions and a little boy who'd taught her that family was about choosing each other every single day in all the small, ordinary moments that added up to a life worth living. And in the morning, she woke to Noah jumping on the bed at an unholy hour, demanding pancakes and announcing that being married meant they had to have a special celebration breakfast every single day now because that's just science. Evan groaned and pulled a pillow over his face. Hannah laughed and went to make coffee. And somewhere in Seattle, Margaret Porter read the wedding announcement in the paper and felt the sharp sting of recognizing exactly what she'd missed. But it didn't matter anymore, because Hannah had learned the most important truth of all. She was enough. She had always been enough. And she'd found a family who saw that truth and celebrated it every single day. The rest was just noise.